It is not light that greets you, but a flicker. The dull amber of fire caught between smoke and splintered rafters, more shadow than flame, more memory than promise. The air is warm only where the hearth breathes, and cold everywhere else. You do not know this yet. You do not know warmth or cold or what a hearth is. You know only the strange, wet weight of being and the noise, so much noise. But no one smiles. Not yet. Not because you are not wanted, though that may be true in ways that will never be spoken aloud. And not because you are unloved, though love here is quiet and hungry, and shaped more like duty than delight. No one smiles because they have learned not to, not until they are sure you will stay. You are swaddled quickly in something rough, something that smells like ash and sour milk. Your cry doesn't pierce the air so much as blend into it, another sound in a house that already holds too many. The low groan of timber, the wheeze of a sleeping elder, the restless scratching under the floor. The goats shift in their corner stall, indifferent to your arrival. The rat pauses near the edge of a broken shoe, sniffs, and decides this new thing is not yet worth noticing. Your mother's hands are shaking, that much you feel. She holds you like something fragile but already lost, like a pot with a crack too deep to mend. Her breath is shallow, not from joy, but exhaustion. Her body is still half elsewhere, with the blood, with the heat, with the ache that has not ended just because you've begun. You are not the first. That is clear. There is a sister in the corner, her face turned away. She mutters something in her sleep, something about bread, or bees, or bad spirits, the words curling like steam and vanishing into the thatch above. A brother sleeps with a hand over his mouth, as though even in dreaming he knows to keep his silence. And your father, if he is here, makes no sound at all. Only the sound of something being mended near the fire. Or maybe it is just the wind. You do not remember the moment you are laid in the straw-lined box, but you feel the way it receives you, not soft, not gentle, but willing. The linen beneath you is damp, not from water, but from the lives that used it before. You are wrapped again, tucked in, as they say, though there is nothing that truly tucks, only the chill that creeps in along your feet and up the back of your neck, nestling in the folds of your tiny shoulders, like it belongs there. There is no blessing yet. That comes later, if at all, if the priest can be spared, if the weather allows it, if the money can stretch just one more time. Until then, you are a soul in waiting, a name whispered but not yet carved, a breath among breaths, measured quietly against the count of others who came and did not stay. And still, the world begins to settle around you. It accepts your existence with the same shrug it gives the rain, the frost, the rats. You are here now. That is enough. No welcome, no rejection, just a place carved from necessity. The walls do not creak for you. They creak because they always do, bending under the weight of time and moss and memory. The fire is not stoked for you. It is stoked because the night is long, and someone else needs warmth more. You do not demand. You do not deserve. You simply are. And that is more than some. The days blur before they begin. You suckle, but there is not always milk. You cry, but not too loudly. Crying too loud is how the neighbors start to whisper, how the spirits get curious. So you learn quiet. Even now, before you know words, you begin to learn quiet. And your mother? She checks for your breath, again and again, in the hush between footsteps. She lays her fingers near your mouth, not for affection, but to count. She has done this before. Once, twice. She has counted and found silence. So now she counts like it matters, and when you exhale, soft and stubborn, she does not smile. But her shoulders fall, just slightly, as though she has set something heavy down, if only for a moment. You do not dream yet. Or if you do, They are dreams without pictures, only sensations. Dampness, the tickle of hay against your ear, a belly that feels too full or not full enough, the scent of lard on wool, the heat of someone else's breath, pressed close because there is no other way. Sometimes a lullaby finds you, not sung, but hummed, a crooked tune, half remembered, folded into the rhythm of stirring a pot or winding twine. It means nothing. It means everything. It is not for you. It is for the person who hums it, a charm to ward off whatever always threatens to arrive. You learn the light not by seeing it, but by feeling when the chill retreats a little. You learn the dark not as absence, but as presence, thick and living and always near. Night is not something that comes. It is something that never quite leaves. The others around you shift in sleep or shuffle in work. You do not yet know their names, but they are part of your world. Elbows and feet, and breaths and smells. The old woman with the rattle in her throat who spits into the fire. The cousin who scratches always, and sometimes sings to herself when no one is listening. The goat, of course. The goat that stares far too long, as if it remembers something you've yet to learn. You are held, occasionally, when needed, when convenient. But more often, you are placed, propped, nested in places where you will not roll or wail or be trampled. You watch the rafters, the smoke curls, the patterns of mud on boots. These become your stories. And the days continue like this until they do not. Until the first time you are too quiet and someone checks. Until the day you do not feed and someone prays. Until a mark shows on your skin and someone whispers. It is always on the edge, the not knowing. Childhood here is a thing survived moment by moment, not cherished. But for now you breathe. You are. And that is all the story you need. No one smiles yet, but they do not weep either. And in a place like this, that is its own kind of welcome. The fire pops softly once, and the room settles again. In the distance, a rooster crows into nothing, as if announcing something that won't arrive. The rat beneath the floor scuttles back into sleep. The goat blinks, unimpressed, and in the folds of damp linen and straw, your breath lingers. A little warm puff that fogs the world, then fades. The warmth does not last. It never does. It lingers for a moment, a cradle of body heat in the dip of the straw, a breath caught in a fold of cloth, and then it fades, swallowed by the cold that lives in the corners, in the cracks between boards, in the silence between heartbeats. There is no announcement of morning, no kind ushering in of light. It simply becomes less dark, the kind of dimness that still swallows you whole, but lets you see the edges of your own hands if you hold them close enough. You are not old enough to know what time is, but you know the difference between now and before, between the hush of night and the shifting quiet that comes after. A pot stirs, a foot drags, a cough curls up from a corner like smoke. The goat thuds against its stall once and then settles. Something has begun. Your belly tells you first, not with hunger exactly, but with emptiness, the kind that makes your limbs feel hollow, your mouth go dry, your cries catch in your throat before they're fully formed. You make a sound, small, testing, a sound like a mouse might make if it were uncertain whether it had permission to live. No one responds. The elder groans in her sleep, reaching toward a dream or an ache or both. The sibling closest to you shifts and pulls the blanket tighter. A breeze creeps in along the wall's edge, dragging its damp fingers across your cheeks. You cry again, a little louder this time, a little more certain. Still nothing. The cough again, now closer. Someone muttering behind a partition. A wooden ladle knocks against the rim of a bowl. You try once more. A sound closer to pleading than protest. But your voice is not yet something the world chooses to listen to. So you learn. You learn that loudness doesn't change the hunger, that sharp sounds wake the wrong people, that too much noise brings not help, but sharp glances and shushing tongues, and the unmistakable coldness of being unwanted, even if just for that moment. You learn to cry with the smallest parts of yourself, the breath between ribs, the quiver in your lip, the part of your throat that trembles without sound. The goat hears. It always does. There's a shift, a rustle, a heavy breath released like a judgment. You stare in its direction, though you cannot see it in the murk. You feel its knowing, that low, ancient awareness that certain things will always ache. There's a time later in the morning, you will learn it well, when the household stirs enough to pretend at motion, though no one is truly awake. It is a rhythm more than a decision. Bodies rise because they must, because the bread needs baking, or the beasts need tending, or the sun has begun to rise behind the fog thick enough to hide it. A foot brushes near you. A hem grazes your face. Someone remembers you exist. You are lifted not with gentleness, but with efficiency. A hand beneath your head, another beneath your damp wrap. You are raised and pressed close to a chest that smells like old sweat and cooked onions. You root, and perhaps this time there is something to be found. Perhaps not. Either way, you are expected to be quiet. You learn to take what is given, when it is given. There is no protest, only silence or noise that makes things worse. The day passes in flickers, in moments between being put down and picked up, between being fed and forgotten, between the stillness of waiting and the small chaos of movement. There is no cradle, no chair carved for you. You are placed in baskets, in troughs, in shawls slung over shoulders. Sometimes you are swaddled tight, and other times not at all. Sometimes your bare skin meets cold air and no one notices. You cry softly, always softly, because you are learning. There is a time, always a time, when someone yells, not at you, at the world, at the task too heavy or the fire gone out, or the bread that will not rise. The noise scrapes across your nerves. You flinch, but you do not cry. Not aloud, not anymore. Instead, you breathe it in, the way the smoke hugs the beams, the way sourness clings to cloth, the way tension settles into the very floorboards, as if the house itself is bracing for bad news. You learn to live inside those silences, to stretch your small sorrows across them, like a blanket with too many holes. There is no kindness in crying, only risk. So you wait. You whimper into the fabric near your mouth. You press your face against your own shoulder, learning how to turn sound into heat, how to bury feeling into flesh. The others have no time. They are children too, though older. They are chased, shouted at, burdened with tasks that feel too large for their hands. They do not see you unless told to. And when they do, it is with obligation. You become something they manage, not something they care for. You learn the weight of being in the way, the quiet sting of being a responsibility. And so you cry less. You save it for when no one is near, when the house holds only shadows and the fire has burned down to ash, when the soft breathing of others surrounds you like fog and you are no longer pretending to be something you are not. You cry then because it is safe, because no one will hear, because crying is only allowed when it won't be answered. The straw beneath you is damp again, always damp, a mixture of spill and sleep and the slow rot of time. Your skin itches. You scratch with fingers too small to reach. You make a noise, but only once. There is a moment, just before true night returns, when you think you hear singing. Not meant for you, but meant for someone. A hum, a rhythm, a tune wrapped in the soft cadence of footsteps across dirt. You drift toward it, not because you believe it will help, but because it is not silence. And silence, you've learned, is not kind. The goat shifts again, closer this time, as if drawn to your learning, as if it too once had to teach its cries to disappear. You don't mind. Its breath is warm. Its presence, strange as it is, feels more solid than most. And so the day ends. You are not comforted, not truly, but you are held briefly. Someone passes and touches your head. Their hand is rough, their attention already moving on. But for that moment, you are touched. You are known. You are here. The fire lets out a final sigh. A pot rattles on the stones, settling. A child mutters in their sleep, dreaming of bread, or bees, or bad spirits. You blink once, then again. And beneath the rustle of straw, the quiet of your cry fades into the folds of night. It does not feel like a moment you remember, but rather one you always knew. The hard ground beneath your palms, the way dirt becomes familiar before language does. It is not only where you sleep, but where your knees learn to carry you, where your world begins and ends again and again with the scuff of heel against packed earth, the brittle scratch of straw against your cheek, the distant sigh of coals long cooled. There is no nursery, no padded cradle, no quiet corner with blankets that smell of soap. Only this floor, uneven and honest, shared with shadows and crumbs, bones tossed aside, soft feathers lost from some bird that no longer needs them. You do not remember being placed here. You simply are here, always have been, and the floor does not ask for thanks. The dirt has a scent of its own, damp but not quite wet, mold that lives in the breath of the house, ash trodden down from old fires. Sometimes it is warm from footsteps, sometimes cold, like it is listening. You learn its dips and hollows. You know where water seeps through in spring, where the dust rises in summer when someone walks too fast. You trace the cracks with fingers that grow calluses before they understand toys. You do not fear it. You become part of it. Like lint, like old spills, like a child who is learning to belong by being still. There is straw scattered here and there, not laid out with intention, just the leavings from feed sacks or animal bedding, or the stiff remnants from someone shaking out a cloak. Some pieces are sharp and snap when you roll over. Others curl gently and tickle your lips. You press it between your fingers, chew on it when you're alone, and dream of soft things, without knowing that soft is something you're missing. Above you, wooden beams groan with the weight of lives. Adults pass by. Boots thud and skirts swish. You are always underfoot, always in the way. But they do not always see you. Their voices are low, tired. Their feet are predictable. You learn the rhythm of your father's step, slow and heavy. Your mother's, quicker but uneven. And someone's cough, always returning. A background music you don't question. Sometimes you are shooed, brushed aside like soot. Not with anger, not always, but with that distracted roughness that becomes familiar. A hand to the shoulder, a foot nudge, a cloth fluttering too close to your head. You learn to move without being asked, to slide aside like a breath of wind, to vanish into the edge of the room, under the bench, behind the barrel. The floor welcomes you wherever you go. It does not demand much. Just your body and your stillness. Play is a whisper, not a song. You find a beetle and follow its trail until it disappears beneath a stone. You press your ear to the ground and listen for things that never speak. You push pebbles into tiny piles, call them towers, then crush them with your fist. You invent stories in dust and then forget them the next moment. Everything you own fits in your hands. Most of it was never really yours. At night, the floor becomes something else, not different, but quieter. The house exhales, the fire dies to a hum, and you find your place among the limbs and snores. If you're lucky, there's an old blanket to share. If not, you tuck your hands between your thighs and curl in on yourself like a question left unanswered. You feel the breath of your sibling across your neck, warm, rhythmic. A foot against your hip, too cold to belong to anyone awake. the murmur of someone else's dream. Sometimes there's the creak of movement, a parent rising, stepping over you, not always careful. Once, they stepped on your fingers. You didn't cry. You learned. Dreams from this floor are strange things. They rise slowly, like steam, made of overheard words and distant shapes. You dream of animals, of fields, of being taller. Sometimes you dream you can stand. Not just walk, but stand without bending. But when you wake, your body has not grown. Only your ache has. Morning comes not with light, but with footsteps again. The world resumes before your eyes are fully open. You do not get to stretch. You do not get a gentle rousing. You are nudged, called, or simply left behind to catch up. The floor grows cold in your absence, but it waits. It always waits. And in its waiting, you leave pieces of yourself, bits of fingernail, a loose tooth once, lost in straw, a pebble you pressed into your palm and never found again. The floor remembers more about you than anyone else does. It knows when you cried quietly. It knows when you whispered your own name, just to be sure you hadn't forgotten it. There is no place else you know better. Not the woods, not the field, not the shadowed space behind the cookpot where the cat sometimes curls. The floor is your playground, your bed, your stage, your punishment. It is the first place you bled, and the first place you laughed. If you could name anything sacred in this house, it would be this worn earth beneath everything. Beneath the fire, beneath the goats, beneath the endless shuffle of laboring feet. No one thanks the floor. No one speaks to it. But you do, sometimes. Not aloud. Just in the way you stay still. In the way you listen to its hush. In the way you press your cheek to it at night and feel it hold the cold just a little longer than it should. Outside, the wind whispers at the walls. Inside, the silence bends but does not break. A cough. A sigh. The faint sound of water dripping into an unseen bowl. You are tired, but the floor does not mind. It has always waited. It always will. And as your eyes begin to close, you feel it again. The straw, the chill, the grit beneath your fingernails. The quiet comfort of a place that has never left you, even as you outgrow it 1 inch at a time. Somewhere behind you, the fire mutters softly to itself. And somewhere beyond that, the goat shifts in its sleep, as if it knows something you do not. And the floor, always listening, always there, cradles you once more. There is no sweetness to your hunger, no ceremony to your first bite. There is only the dull ache that comes again and again, folding inside itself like cloth that never dries, always damp, always clinging. You do not remember the moment milk gave out, only that it faded like a candle wick drowned too soon, leaving a hollow in your belly and a darker silence where once there was warmth. Milk, if it comes thin and hesitant, like something ashamed to be called sustenance. Sometimes from your mother, though less often now. Sometimes from a goat, sour and frothy, with a taste that curls in your cheek like mold you weren't meant to chew. The cup it's poured into is chipped, not just from time, but from the way life handles everything here, roughly, briefly, and without apology. You do not drink to thrive. You drink so the gnawing inside has something to struggle against. And when milk is gone, the porridge returns. Always porridge. A slurry of boiled grains and whatever scraps could be coaxed into a pot. Turnip peels, weevil-bitten barley, a thinning of yesterday's stew. It's never hot enough, never enough of it, never flavored with anything more forgiving than smoke. You sit cross-legged on the packed floor, the bowl nestled in your lap like a small, heavy truth. The surface of it skins over too quickly, forming a pale crust that cracks like old parchment when your wooden spoon breaks through. The steam rises weakly, scented of ash and something almost familiar. You dig in without waiting. No one tells you to. Hunger speaks first. Hunger always speaks first. You do not chew, not really. You mouth it, swallowing without pause. There is no savoring, no luxury of taste. The texture is all you know, grit from the stone-ground flour, husks that weren't sifted out, the occasional pebble that escaped notice and cracks lightly between your teeth. You don't complain. You just spit the shard into your hand and keep going. Sometimes when the weather is cruel and the storeroom empties quicker than the days do, the porridge grows thinner, stretched with more water than grain. Then it sloshes instead of clings, and it cools too fast, and the pangs in your stomach feel betrayed by the lie of fullness. You eat it anyway, because to not eat is worse, because someone once said it fills the space even if it doesn't stay. There is no memory of sweet things, not real ones. Honey is for feast days. Apples are bruised and hoarded. Butter is a rumor, whispered in other households, never yours. Sugar? You've never seen it, only heard a cousin mention it once. White as snowfall, he said, but not cold, and gone before you can hold it in your mouth. You remember the look in his eyes when he said it. It was not joy. It was longing's echo. So porridge becomes the rhythm of your mornings, and sometimes your nights. It becomes what you expect, even if you do not want it. It becomes the quiet insult that never rises to cruelty, just the constant reminder that comfort is for others. You feel it settle in your belly like wet rope, heavy and unkind. And still, you eat. You eat when it is yours, because it may not be tomorrow, because there are smaller mouths who now cry louder than you do, because bowls get passed around by hand, not fairness. The eldest might eat first, the sickest sometimes second. The rest is chance and placement, and whether someone remembers your name in time. The baby cries. Of course she does. You glance at her, wide-mouthed, red-faced, fists curled as if she could wring milk from the air. But there's nothing left. Your mother's breast hangs limp, and her eyes are far away, looking at something that is not the child, not the fire, not this room. You look back down at your porridge. A bit of it has dried along the rim of the bowl like plaster. You scrape it off with a thumbnail. You eat it too. The porridge does not love you back, but it is there, reliable as frost, familiar as bruises. It has no warmth beyond the heat of the bowl, no kindness beyond the absence of hunger, briefly postponed. You want more, but more never comes. You think sometimes about food as other people might know it, what feasts must feel like. Meat so tender it falls apart under your teeth. Pies that bleed sweetness when cut. Bread with air inside instead of stone. You wonder how long it takes to eat without haste. To eat until the ache turns to fullness. You wonder if that kind of silence exists. The silence after a meal that does not leave you emptier. But you stop yourself. Dreams do not fill bellies. And here, to dream of food is to remind your body what it's missing. It is better to let the thought go. Let it sink into the ashes like spilled broth. Let it die where no one can hear it. A fly lands on the edge of the bowl. You wave it away, but it returns, bold and unhurried. You envy it a little. It has eaten more sweetness than you ever will. The thought makes you laugh, just a little. A breath through your nose, barely there. No one notices. They rarely do. The porridge turns cold before you finish. It always does. You stir it, but it doesn't help. The chill makes it congeal, thick and sullen. Still, you eat. Because this is what there is. Because this is how children grow. Not quickly, not joyfully, but inch by inch through grim persistence. Through spoons of barely food. Through meals that feel like endurance more than relief. Your tongue goes numb to the flavor. Your jaw learns the rhythm. Your belly forgets the luxury of satisfaction, and instead learns stillness. You become the kind of child who doesn't ask for seconds, because you know there are none. You learn to glance only once at someone else's bowl, no more. It's rude to hope. Hope is dangerous in a room with too many mouths and too few grains. The bowl is lighter now. You wipe it with your finger, collecting the last sticky smear and putting it in your mouth. A ritual, quiet and precise. You do it without thinking, as if this gesture alone is the closest thing to ceremony you'll ever know. Someone sneezes behind you. The goat bleats from the doorway, nosing at the threshold like she might walk in and demand her turn. The baby cries again. Your mother doesn't move. The fire snaps, a thin sound in the large silence. You place the bowl aside. It clinks faintly on the stone. You do not feel full, but you no longer feel the bite. That is enough. That has to be. You lick your lips. They taste of ash and something faintly bitter. You draw your knees to your chest, watching the fire, letting its flicker reflect in your eyes. The warmth doesn't reach you, not fully, but it's something to look at, something to drift toward. Outside, the wind howls faintly, a winter voice, thin and wild. You are used to it. You are used to many things you should not be used to. But children in this place learn early, not to expect, only to accept. Your belly quiets, but the quiet is not comfort. It is simply the absence of noise. It is simply what comes next. You lie down again on the hard earth. You press your cheek to the floor. You close your eyes and pretend your hunger has gone somewhere else. And in that slow, familiar ache, you wait for sleep to come. The spoon scrapes the last echo from the bowl. The fire exhales, and the night folds back in. The bowl is empty. The fire is not. It sputters on with its thin orange tongue licking at damp wood, trying and failing to forget that everything here is always a little wet, a little old, a little unwilling. You don't move toward it anymore, not out of stubbornness, just the quiet knowing that heat does not travel far, and you are not one of the lucky few it reaches. Instead, you pull your knees up, bone to belly, fabric to skin. It's not a blanket, just a tunic handed down too many times, stretched and patched and too thin to remember its original shape. You wrap your arms around your legs, not because it helps, but because it is a thing to do when your body wants to shiver, and there's no point. You've been cold before, but this is not weather. This is something else, something permanent. A kind of chill that lives inside the walls, inside the floors, inside your breath when it clouds in front of you, even on days when the sun pretends to shine. It's summer, or they said it was, a week ago. The fields are green. The air smells of dust and dry things. But inside, the cold doesn't leave. Not the real cold. The cold that sits behind your shoulder blades and sighs. The cold that curls into your joints before you learn their names. It waits in the shadows and lingers in your sleeves. It does not retreat when the sun rises. It merely shifts its weight and stays. Your tunic is rough. Wool, maybe. Or what's left of wool after too many winters and too many hands. It smells of smoke and old skin, of the sweat of others. Sometimes when you're very still, you think you can feel the shape of the last body that wore it. Not in a ghostly way. Just the sag in the shoulders, the looseness at the waist, the threadbare elbows where they must have leaned, again and again, into the ache of being. The sleeves are too long, or perhaps they used to be, before you rolled them up and the fabric remembered the crease. Now they end just past your wrists, enough to cover your hands when you tuck them in, enough to pretend you have gloves, which you do not. You've never had gloves. You've seen people with cloaks, not your people, not your family, but passers-by, traders, strangers who walk quickly and do not seem to feel the breeze. Their cloaks ripple like flags and make a sound when they move, a brushing, a swish, a noise that suggests protection. You imagine what it must feel like to wear a second layer not stitched from compromise, a garment that wraps rather than pinches, a warmth that doesn't need to be begged for. At night, the cold sharpens. It tucks itself into your toes, into the gap where your heel has worn through the leather scrap you call a shoe. You do not undress to sleep. No one does. Sleep is not an event. It is just the moment your body stops pretending to resist. You curl up on the packed dirt floor, perhaps near your sister if she hasn't rolled away yet, and you do not chase heat. You just let the cold lie next to you, the way it always does. You used to cry about it, not loudly, not often, but there were nights, early on, when the cold seemed too unfair. You cried into your arms, not wanting to wake anyone, not wanting to hear the silence of no one caring. But over time, the tears stopped. Not because the cold stopped hurting, but because the ache of it became ordinary, a second skin, a kind of stillness that no longer startled you. You wear the same clothes during the day, of course. No such thing as changing for comfort. The sun may rise and the breeze may warm for a few hours, but still your bones feel brittle. Still the wind finds its way through the seams. You walk with your arms folded, not as defiance, but as shelter. The road is long. The field work is long. The chores are long. The cold just comes with you. Sometimes the older ones joke, dry words with dry smiles. You're lucky to be small, they say, less to freeze. It's not funny, not really, but they say it as though it matters, as though laughter could patch a roof. You've noticed that the animals do better, the goat especially. She sleeps in the corner where the wall is less drafty, where the straw is thicker. She breathes heavily, her sides rising and falling like a bellows. You've thought, once or twice, about curling against her. Not out of fondness, but necessity. But there are rules, not spoken, but present. Children on one side, animals on the other. Even if both shiver. The baby doesn't get the rules yet. She cries when it's cold, still too young to understand that nothing changes when you cry. Sometimes your mother wraps her in the remnants of a blanket. Sometimes she just holds her close and hums something too soft to hear. You listen anyway, even when the words are lost. The hum is warmer than most things in your life. You pretend it's for you too. You wonder sometimes how other children live. Not out of envy, just curiosity. Are they cold too? Do they sleep wrapped in their own arms, dreaming of wool that isn't scratchy and shoes that don't breathe? Or do they wake to bread and warmth and stories? You don't imagine castles. That's too far, too large, too ridiculous. But a place without wind, without mold, without blue fingers. That seems like magic enough. There is a crack in the wall near where you sleep. Not large, just wide enough for the breeze to whisper through. You've tried to stuff it with straw, once with cloth, but it always returns. The cold is patient. The cold has time. You cough sometimes now. Not often, not deep. Just a tickle in the chest that comes when the damp settles in. You know others who cough more. The old man near the end of the row, who always smells of garlic and sweat. The girl with the twisted leg, who wheezes even when she's sitting still. You watch them quietly. You count how many coughs come before they stop for breath. You count because counting is a thing you can do when you can't feel your toes. Your hands are red, cracked at the knuckles sometimes. You chew the skin there when no one is looking, not because it helps, but because it's yours. In the rare moments when the fire burns strong, when someone's found wood that isn't soaked through, or when luck offers a half hour of comfort, you stretch toward it. Not close enough to be scolded, just enough to feel the ghost of heat on your cheeks. You hold your fingers out. You turn them slowly. You pretend the warmth stays. It never does. It fades before it reaches your core. It fades the moment you turn away. So you do not chase it anymore. You carry the cold like a sack, like a silence. You wrap it around your shoulders when the wind howls and you don't want to seem small. You breathe into your cupped hands and smell the salt of your skin and the breath of the day before. And you walk, and you work, and you sleep, and you wait, not for warmth. That is a thing you've stopped believing in, just for the season to change, or the air to shift, or the wind to forget your name, because you are a child, and children are not warmed. They are simply expected to endure, and you do. Somewhere nearby, a shutter bangs softly in the wind. The goat sighs, and the night folds back in. You do not remember the first time you held a tool, only that it felt heavier than it looked. A splintered handle, worn smooth at the grip, passed from a hand that didn't ask questions. That's how things arrive here. Not gifted, not explained. Simply handed over as if they'd always belonged to you. You hold it without knowing how to refuse. The world doesn't wait for you to grow into it. It molds you early, not with kindness, but with quiet expectation. The day does not start with laughter. It starts with breath, slow and reluctant, drawn beneath rough cloth and shared blankets. Then comes the ache in the arms, the stiffness in your back, the thud of footsteps overhead or beside you, whichever sibling was quickest to rise or pushed. There is no chest of toys tucked at the foot of the bed, no wooden horse, no cloth doll, unless one's been carved from leftover firewood or knotted from discarded rags. Even then, it is not play, not really. It is holding something soft in a world that is not. Outside, the tasks have already begun. The distant bleating of goats signals feeding time. You know this before your eyes have adjusted to the dimness. The room around you smells of wool and smoke and stale dampness. You count the straw poking through your mat, feeling it itch at the tender skin behind your knees. That is the first sensation of the day. A small one. It prepares you for the others. You do not own much, but your time is never your own. It is pulled apart like old linen, patched, reused, stretched across too many hands. The bucket in your fingers is too wide, too deep. It knocks against your knees as you walk. The well is far, farther, when your feet are bare and the morning frost bites between your toes. But your steps find rhythm eventually. The weight of the empty pail is different than the weight of a full one. You learn this not as a fact, but as a feeling. In your wrists, in the stretch across your shoulders, in the slosh of cold against your thighs when you spill and no one is watching. Other children do this too. Some smaller than you, some older, with the hollow look of someone who has already forgotten how to sigh. You do not speak much. Words are a luxury. Energy is saved for movement, for lifting, for scrubbing, for silence. Sometimes when your fingers are red with cold and raw with soap root, you find yourself humming without meaning to. Not a song, just a shape of sound. The goats know it. The floor does too. The hum wraps around the rhythm of work and becomes a thread between the moments, between who you were before you had chores and who you are now. A small body with small hands, asked to do not small things. Chores blur into each other. You sweep with a broom that's mostly handle. You carry kindling that stabs your ribs. You shell peas that wrinkle your fingers before they're grown. You sort root vegetables with the care of someone being watched, because you often are. Adults hover like clouds, heavy with weather and never announcing when they'll rain. But even in this, there is something quiet, something soft, if not kind. The way dust motes drift in sunbeams while you sweep. The way warm stones feel beneath your feet when the hearth has been busy. The way the scent of mint, rare and unexpected, clings to your sleeves after scrubbing a basin that someone spilled herbs in. These are not joys. They are not toys. But they are something. And that is enough sometimes. There are moments when task becomes game, but only by accident. You line stones along the path as if they are soldiers. You trace swirls in the spilled grain like patterns in snow. You watch the hens peck in sequence and pretend you trained them. You tip the broom handle just enough to balance it in your palm and see how long it takes before it falls. A contest between gravity and stubbornness. You lose, but it makes you smile once. A short curl at the corner of your mouth. Then it's gone. Sometimes you imagine what it would feel like to have nothing to do, to sit still long enough for your legs to forget walking, to lie in the hayloft without a reason. But those thoughts are dangerous. They lead to longing. Longing leads to disappointment, and disappointment takes energy. You do not have energy to spare. The goat watches you as you pull water from the trough. Its eyes are unblinking, almost wise, as if it too has done its share of chores, maybe in another life, maybe in this one. You meet its gaze and say nothing. Words are still a luxury. When the day bends toward evening, your hands are sore and your eyes are slow to blink. You carry a basket back inside, filled with things you didn't choose to gather. Twigs, misshapen tubers, bits of rag that might still be useful. You pass the neighbor's house and hear the low groan of someone lifting something heavy. It echoes into your shoulder like a sound you've always known. Inside, the air is thicker, warm, but not comfortably so. It clings to you like wool after rain. You place your basket down and don't ask what's next. You wait. That is part of the task too. Later, when your body folds into its sleep shape, curled in a patch of straw that remembers you, the day does not feel like an accomplishment. It feels like something that happened to you, and something that will happen again. Your fingers twitch and rest. The memory of holding, of lifting, of sweeping. Tasks follow you even here, into dreams. You are never alone, not even in your sleep. The rat beneath the boards reminds you with a scratch. The goat outside with a grunt. The sound of another child's breath beside yours. Shallow, steady, warm. And somewhere, just outside the reach of sound, the broom still leans against the wall, waiting. The broom you leaned against the wall is still there in the morning, but you are not. You are somewhere else now, out past the thatched roof and the low doorframe, past the warmth of the hearth you only visit but never claim. The sky above is not quite morning, not quite night, but something in between, that cold gray that leaks into your eyes before you are ready. Your feet touch the ground with a dull familiarity, as though they've been walking since before you were born. And perhaps they have. Perhaps your soles carry memories from someone else's childhood, worn into the leather scraps that pass for shoes, or into the grooves of your calluses, where the cold lives longer than it should. There are paths you do not choose, only follow. They stretch ahead like promises made without meaning, across frost-hardened dirt, over stones that have learned your weight. You know them better than you know rest. You know where the grass gives way to mud, where the puddles hide beneath straw, where the road whispers warnings in the bend of your knees. You walk because someone told you to, or didn't, because walking is what fills the hours between waking and dusk, to the stream, to the woods, to the fields, to the neighbor with the broken cart who needs help carrying kindling. You walk because the world demands something of your body, always movement, always motion, and never explains what for. There are days when your legs feel like they belong to someone else, stiff and slow and stubborn. But still they carry you, because stopping is not a thing you've learned how to do. Not properly, not without guilt, not without someone noticing. Your little brother is smaller and slower, and so he gets carried. Not by you. You're not big enough for that yet. But sometimes you wish you could. Not out of kindness, but out of envy. The idea of lifting someone else just to be allowed stillness for a while. It's a strange thought. It disappears as quickly as it comes, like a footprint in thawing snow. The road is not empty. It's lined with the ghosts of other children's errands. Scattered straw from a dropped bundle. A twig snapped just where small hands might have tugged it loose. The faintest mark of a bare heel where the frost didn't have time to settle again. You do not speak to them. You only follow. You pass the chapel bell. It doesn't ring, but you feel it in your chest anyway, like an old bruise. It marks the road not with sound, but with presence. A warning, maybe, or just another watcher, silent and constant. Sometimes, the road is kind, a bit of sunshine warming a patch of stone, or a hedgerow that hides berries, not yet picked clean by birds. But kindness here is not comfort. It is brief. A sip, not a drink. A pause, not a promise. Your knees bend with memory. The memory of stumbles, of thorns, of slipping in places you now step more carefully. The memory of a voice, sharp, impatient, telling you to keep up. Even when your legs burned and your breath dragged behind you like a weight, that voice doesn't echo anymore, but the ache it left does. Other feet join yours sometimes. Siblings, neighbors, stray dogs who know the smell of crumbs and cracked bowls. You do not talk, but you exist together. A soft rhythm of shared movement, a procession of small lives tethered to duty. You hold a bucket in one hand, the edge of your tunic in the other. The bucket pulls at your shoulder. The tunic flaps in the wind. Your feet slap the earth in uneven time. Everything is offbeat, but somehow it moves forward. When the wind rises, it whistles through the holes in your shoes. A sound like breath, but not your own. It travels up your legs and into your ribs. You learn to clench your toes to hold the warmth in. It works, a little. You pretend it works more than it does. The animals you pass along the way are better dressed than you. Cows with thick coats, goats with smug expressions, birds with feathers that trap the light. You look down at your own layers, hand-me-downs from siblings who grew out of them or died before they could. You do not resent them, but sometimes you wish wool was less itchy. Sometimes you wish you were an animal. The road to the stream is longer in winter, not because it changes, but because your body does. Heavier, slower, colder. You pass the crooked tree with its hollow knot, where you once found a bird's nest. Empty now, but still a place you check each time, just in case. It feels like a secret you share with no one. Even the bird never returned. By midday, your shadow is behind you. That means you've turned toward home. But the way back is not easier. It is uphill, always, even when it isn't. The water in the bucket sloshes and steals your balance. You stop once to rest your fingers on a rock. The rock is not warm, but it is steady. You glance toward the sky. It tells you nothing. Clouds hang like damp wool, stitched loosely across blue. You do not ask for sun. You only notice when it's missing. Back at the door, your feet hesitate. The inside means more work, but it also means stillness, if only for a breath. You step inside. The floor greets you with its familiar creak. The goat snorts from her corner. You nod, not out of politeness, but habit. Later, when your feet lie flat beneath you and your legs tremble without motion, the roads echo in your muscles. You feel each step again, not as pain, but as memory. You shift your weight in the straw and find no comfort, but you find place. You belong to the path now, or it belongs to you. The others sleep beside you, their breathing stacked like firewood. The silence isn't complete. It never is. A cough behind the wall, a squeak from the rafters, a thud from a restless foot. And beneath all that, the hum of the road, still whispering through your bones, as if it's not quite done with you yet. The ache in your legs fades into the familiar grind of earth beneath your feet. Not quite pain, not quite comfort, just pressure, just the constant shape of living in a world that doesn't notice when you're tired. The last thread of yesterday clings to your toes, dry and flaking, but never gone. It joins the other layers, the older ones, buried deep beneath skin that no longer remembers what clean ever meant. Dirt here is not a visitor. It is not something that arrives and leaves. It is something you are born with, something you breathe, something you carry. It hides in the folds behind your ears, in the creases of your elbows, in the bend of your knees where water rarely reaches. And when the rare water does come, cold and sharp, scooped from a stream that never meant to be kind, it only teases the surface. The rest of the dirt stays behind. It always does. You don't remember the last time you were truly bathed. Not in the way the grown folk talk about, with warm water and quiet hands. You were too young then. What you know is wiping your face with a damp cloth that smells like mildew. What you know is scraping fingernails clean with a stick. What you know is the sharpness of straw when it pokes between your collar and your neck. Even the goat has her own scent of earth and musk, and no one tells her it's wrong. The others smell the same. That is the mercy of it. You're not alone. Your brother's hair holds the smell of last season's smoke. Your sister's feet leave marks on the floor, not because they are dirtier than yours, but because the dirt in the room has grown used to her steps. Even your mother's hands, when they touch your face in moments of rare stillness, leave smudges. You feel them not as blemishes, but as signs of presence, soft brown ghosts of care that do not wash away. There are puddles in the path outside the door, shallow bowls of yesterday's rain. They call to your toes in summer, when the air swells with flies and boredom. You step in, first one foot, then the other. The chill jolts your bones for only a second. Then comes the settling, the thick squish between toes, the slow breath of the ground exhaling up through your soles. The puddle does not clean you. It coats you differently. That is all. The straw mattress you sleep on rustles when you turn. It was never new, not even for the eldest sibling. It holds the stories of years, damp nights, spilled broth, the muddy prints of a chicken who once got too curious. You've learned to ignore the itch. You've learned not to ask where the smell comes from. You've learned to curl up in the same place each night, because that spot knows your shape, and sometimes it feels a little warmer. Washing, when it happens, is not what you imagine. It is a chore, not a comfort. The water is fetched in buckets, and every drop feels borrowed. There's always someone behind you waiting. There's always someone in front of you still soaped and shivering. The soap is ash and fat, harsh and greasy. It clings to your arms like a punishment. And afterward, you are not new. You are simply wetter. You dry off in the sun, or near the fire, or under your shirt. And the dirt waits. It does not mind. You've watched the priest's robes sway in the wind, whiter than the clouds above. You've wondered if they ever touch the ground. They must not. Not the same ground you walk. Not the same soil that lives in your socks and behind your teeth. You've looked at the book he carries and thought it smells less like dust and more like things you cannot name, things that were never allowed to be dirty. But your world does not carry books. It carries baskets of turnips, piles of splinters, the scent of drying dung. It carries the sound of someone coughing in the next room. The floorboards never stop creaking. They are not heavy with secrets, just with footsteps, slow and layered. Each creak is a lullaby. Each creak says, we are still here, and the dirt is still beneath us. Sometimes, when it rains for days, the mud climbs up the walls. You notice it near the doorway, where the shoes never sit long enough to dry. It rises like it's reaching. The chickens track it in on their claws. You wipe it with your shirt sleeve without thinking. You do not tell anyone. There's no point. The house will dry eventually. The mud will flake, fall, and join the dust again. There are dreams, sometimes, of warmth, of softness, of cloth that does not itch and skin that does not burn when scrubbed. But the dreams are pale and slippery. You can never hold them for long. They drift away by morning, like mist lifting from dung-soaked fields. And in their place is your shirt, stiff from yesterday's sweat, and your feet, already blackened just from standing. The piglets press against each other in the pen, their sides caked with the same mire you wear. They grunt and twitch and do not care. They do not hide from the muck. They do not weep when it stains their food. You wonder if it's easier, living like them. You wonder what it would be like to not notice filth at all. Then you realize, maybe you already don't. In the colder months, the fire is your only reprieve. You sit close, too close sometimes, until your shins sting with heat and the smoke curls into your hair. But even then, it does not cleanse. It only adds another scent. Smoke is not absence of dirt. Smoke is its cousin. Quieter, finer, more patient. It settles in layers over your shoulders, over your tongue, in the folds of your clothes. You breathe it. You wear it. You become it. Your skin is not yours alone. It is home to the world, to the mites, the fleas, the tiny crawlers that bite without asking. You scratch without thinking, even in sleep. The itching becomes part of you, like blinking, like breathing. You do not remember when it began. You do not expect it to stop. Someone once told you about a place where people bathe for pleasure, where tubs are filled not with chores but with quiet, where skin is touched not to clean but to soothe. You did not believe them. Or maybe you did, but only for a moment. Then you went back to scraping your nails and flicking away the flake of skin that fell into your porridge. There is a kind of comfort in the grime, though you would not admit it, not aloud. It is the comfort of sameness, of knowing that no one will ask you to be more than this, of knowing that the dirt will still be there tomorrow, waiting, like an old friend who never judges. It is the comfort of the known, the weight of the familiar, the crust along your fingernails that says, yes, you were here. And when you finally lie down, your head on straw that smells like everything you've ever walked through, the earth still hums beneath you. You feel it in your elbows, in your teeth, in the crease behind your knee. You close your eyes and sink, not into sleep, but into the slow, sinking knowledge that even in your dreams, you will carry the dust of this place. And when you wake, you will still belong to it. And somewhere, just before the fire gives in to ash, the goat shifts in the dark, and the rat stirs beneath the floor, and your skin breathes in silence that tastes like dirt. The silence after the scratching fades is not empty. It is full of something heavier. It settles just behind your thoughts, like breath fogged against the cool stone of a chapel wall. The rat beneath the floor has gone still, and the goat has stopped muttering in the dark. And now it is just you, curled in your shared corner, with the dust thick in your nostrils and something else pressing against your chest. The shape of something unseen, but always near. You have not been taught what holiness is, only what happens if you forget it. There is no part of you the church does not reach, even when the doors are closed, even when you are not looking, even when you are half asleep, half dreaming. The bell sounds through you. Its tone is not loud, not anymore. You've heard it too many times. But it sinks into your body like cold into bone, deep and slow. And when it rings, you do not think. You rise. You murmur. You fold your hands whether they are clean or not. The first time you understood shame, it came with a cross carved in the air. It was not your own sin. It was someone else's, a brother's wandering feet, a sister's stolen berry. But still, your body stiffened. Still, your head bowed. Still, you felt your hands grow hot. You learned that guilt can be caught like smoke, that it drifts and wraps and fills the corners of a home without ever asking. They say the church is made of stone, but you've never really seen the walls. Not fully. You see the flicker of candlelight against a rough pillar. You see the edge of the priest's robe brushing the floor. You see your own shoes, muddy and too tight, and you try not to shuffle, because every sound feels like a sin. There is an image above the altar, painted, carved, or sewn. You can't be sure. You don't look too long. Its eyes are not quite eyes. Its hands are too calm. And yet you feel its weight. Watching. Always watching. It sees through the holes in the thatch, through the haze of smoke, through the silence between your thoughts. It sees when you are tempted to lie. It sees when you wish for more. It sees when you feel tired and do not say thank you. You carry the church like a second spine. It shapes how you move, how you kneel, how you swallow your hunger. You do not understand the prayers. The words are heavy and far away, but you mimic them. You shape your lips around them because not doing so would be noticed. And being noticed is worse than being wrong. There are stories, of course, always stories, of flames and punishments and a darkness that swallows children who speak out of turn, of angels with swords and demons that smell like sweet milk turned sour, of saints who bled without crying and boys who were struck down for laughter. You do not know where the stories begin or end. They drift like the cold fog through the trees and settle around your bed, whispering in voices you don't remember inviting. Once, you found a feather on the path to the well. You held it in your hand for too long. It felt like something forbidden, beautiful without purpose. And you worried. You worried it meant something, that it was a test, that you had failed already just for liking it. The priest doesn't look at you directly, not often. But when he does, it is as if he sees not just your face, but every stain, every selfish thought, every half-formed hope you've ever dared to keep hidden. His eyes are not cruel, just still and cold and endless. You think he must never itch, or sweat, or sleep badly. He must float above it all. He must know how many times you've wished your portion of bread was larger. The church tells you who you are. You are small. You are fortunate. You are born into sin. You are blessed to be born at all. You are lucky. You are nothing. Even at the edge of the fields, with the sun on your neck and the air full of bees, you still feel it. A gaze that presses gently at first, then harder. You check your hands. You check your posture. You try not to want. Not too much. The others carry it too. Your mother mutters prayers when she stirs the pot, even when there's nothing in it but water and hope. Your father crosses himself before drinking. Your sister hides her giggles under her breath like stolen apples. Even the old man down the road, who cannot walk without pain and who curses the rain like an enemy, still pauses when the bell tolls, still tips his head toward the sound, still remembers to be afraid. The fear is not loud. It does not shout. It lives in the corners, in the space between words, in the pause before someone answers. It grows slowly, like moss on the church wall, spreading without needing permission. And yet somehow, it comforts too. There is a rhythm to it, a structure, a shape to your days. When you wake, you pray. When you eat, you thank. When you sleep, you try to forget the things you thought that might have been unclean. There is safety in repetition. There is peace in being told who to be. But it is not freedom. It is a quiet leash. You've watched children cry for forgiveness, for things they did not understand. You've watched grown men flinch at words written in a language none of you speak. You've felt your own mouth dry when someone says the word penance. You do not ask what it means. You already know. It means kneeling on cold stone. It means the weight of eyes that cannot be soothed. It means something inside you is wrong. You wonder what happens if you forget a prayer, if you yawn during Mass, if you step into the church with the wrong foot first. You don't remember who told you those things mattered, but you remember the feeling, the tightness in your stomach, the way you held your breath until the thought passed. Sometimes you dream of stained glass, not the real kind. You've never seen it, but something like it, light in strange colors, shapes that do not move, a warmth that isn't real. and you wake up feeling as though you've done something you shouldn't. Like joy was borrowed. Like your dreams will be reviewed. The dirt under your fingernails doesn't bother you, but the dirt in your thoughts does. The ones that wonder, the ones that want, the ones that ask, silently, if there is more than this. If there is kindness beyond the pulpit. If there is forgiveness that doesn't ache. You do not voice these thoughts. Not even to the goat. Not even to the fire. And yet, sometimes, when you are walking alone, and the mist is thick, and the world feels still and forgotten, you hum, just softly, a tune that no one taught you, a tune that is not in the hymns. It isn't reverent. It isn't sinful. It just is. And in that moment, with the mud sucking at your heels and the sky pressing low, you feel something shift. Not freedom, not rebellion, just a breath, just a pause, just the faintest flicker of a self beyond the silence. Then the bell rings again, and the breath folds back inside you, and you return to the shape they gave you, because it is the only shape you know. And somewhere in the rafters, a bird you never see lets out a single note, short and strange, before the silence takes hold once more. The sound of the bell still lingers, not in your ears, but somewhere deeper, like a tone etched into your ribs. Its echo has settled in the air, and now everything feels quieter than it did before. You breathe in the same smoke-thickened hush that has always surrounded your days. But there's something else tucked beneath it now. A stillness with edges, the kind that makes you listen harder without knowing why. And then you hear it, the wet rasp of a cough muffled by wool hidden behind the partition. It does not come from the goat. It does not come from the rafters. It comes from the other side of the room, where the air is thicker, where the breath always smells faintly of sweat and something older. You've heard that sound before. You've heard it in seasons when the frost did not leave the windows, and in summers when the heat would not let go. It's always the same. That dragging, hollow sound, too deep to be clearing a throat, too tired to be a cry for attention. It is the sound of something shifting in the lungs, something unwanted building itself into the body like mold between stones. No one speaks of it directly. No one has to. The sounds speak for themselves. The sniffle that becomes a wheeze. The wheeze that becomes a rattle. The rattle that becomes silence. You've learned the sequence by heart, even if no one taught it to you. Sickness isn't a visitor. It doesn't knock or wait to be welcomed. It lives here, just like you do, curled in the corners, stitched into the straw, waiting between the folds of a blanket that's never quite dry. It rides in on the breath of strangers, on the hands of your siblings, on the dirt beneath your fingernails. It's in the bread that's gone soft in the wrong places. It's in the goat's milk, when the goat's eyes look glassy and wrong. It's in the air, especially on days when the wind doesn't move. You do not remember a time when your nose didn't run, or when your joints didn't ache in the mornings, or when you didn't lie awake listening to someone else's breathing, measuring it with the slow fear of knowing what comes next. Sometimes the body burns. Sometimes it goes cold. Sometimes the skin turns shades it shouldn't, flushed like a bruised apple or pale like leftover wax. You have seen the signs. You have traced them on others. You have feared their reflection on your own arm, your own cheek, your own chest. You've watched a child, not much older than you, shake with fever until they stopped shaking. And then there was only stillness. A stillness so complete it made the world feel louder. The birds kept singing. The goats kept chewing. The wind went on, brushing past the door like nothing had changed. But something had. And you felt it. You still feel it. When someone gets sick, the house gets smaller. Not in size, but in breath, in sound, in permission. The laughter, what little there was, disappears first. Then the singing, Then the conversations, reduced to whispers, as if being loud might make it worse, as if joy might offend the spirit that's moved in and made its home inside the body. You are told to stay away, but never far enough. There isn't enough space for real distance. The walls are thin. The air is shared. The blankets are passed hand to hand, body to body. Even if you sleep on the far side of the hearth, the sickness finds its way into your dreams. You hear someone muttering in their sleep again, a sibling perhaps. Their voice is soft and wrong, syllables that slide like fever dreams. You do not ask what they're dreaming about. Dreams are private, especially sick ones, especially when they repeat. There are herbs, always herbs, crushed and boiled and stirred with care, bitter things in wooden bowls, steam that burns your nose and doesn't help. Sometimes they work, sometimes they do nothing. But doing something feels better than nothing, even when it changes nothing. The old woman with the bent back says prayers over the sick, or curses. You can't tell the difference. Her voice hums like the wind through dry reeds, and she draws symbols in the air that fade before you can understand them. You watch her with a kind of awe, a kind of fear, as if she might see the sickness in you before you feel it, as if she might call it out. You've been sick before, of course. Everyone has. But you never know when it's the kind you survive. You never know if this cough is just a cough or the beginning of the end. You don't ask. No one asks. You just wait and hope and pray, if you remember how. When the fever comes, it comes like a fire pretending to be sleep. Your limbs go heavy. Your mouth dries out. You forget words. You sweat through your shift, and the straw sticks to your back like a second skin. You dream, but the dreams are twisted. You dream of walking and never stopping, of being cold and wet and endlessly tired, of a face you cannot see, watching from the dark. You wake sometimes, but waking is not clarity. It's just another layer, another breath in the long blur of time. No one holds you when you're sick, not because they don't care, but because they're afraid. Touch is rationed. Warmth is shared only when the risk is low. And even when someone sits beside you, their hands remain folded. Their eyes flick toward the door, toward the sky, toward anything else. The goat watches from the doorway. Always the goat. It doesn't blink. It doesn't move. It simply exists, like a quiet guardian of the threshold, as if it knows more than you do about the space between breath and silence. Sometimes a child disappears, not quickly, not loudly. They simply fade. One day their cough grows softer, their appetite shrinks, their steps slow, and then, one morning, their place by the fire is empty. No one says the word. No one says any word. The silence stretches and wraps around the space they left, and it becomes something sacred, something untouchable. You are not allowed to ask where they've gone, but you already know. The priest comes, not always, but sometimes. He murmurs rites in a tongue you do not know. He holds a thing that smells of ash and oil. He touches the forehead of the still child and says a name that may or may not be theirs. And then he leaves, his robes trailing mud and memory. After that, the room changes. Again. The silence deepens. The air thickens. Someone scrubs the floor with cold water and cloth. Someone opens a shutter to let the air move again. But the weight never lifts. It just becomes part of the walls. You learn not to grow too attached, not to hope too hard, not to trust the strength in someone's voice. It can disappear between one cough and the next. And yet, you still hope. You still look for color in someone's cheeks. You still smile when the fever breaks. You still whisper stories when you think no one is listening. Because sometimes stories help. Not much, but a little. And a little is enough. The fire crackles. The air shifts. The blanket pulls tighter around your shoulders. You lie still and listen. To the wind through the eaves, to the snore of the dog by the door, to the shallow breathing of someone not yet well. You do not know what tomorrow brings, but tonight your body is warm, your chest is clear, and the rat beneath the floor is scratching again, reminding you that life, no matter how small, still clings to its place in the dark. The morning doesn't quite begin. It seeps in, quiet and gray, like smoke through an old roof that never quite keeps the weather out. There is no clear line between night and day, only a shift in weight, a cold that feels slightly different. Your limbs, curled against the familiar bump in the floor, remember what it means to move before your mind does. Someone coughs. Not you. Someone else. A cousin, maybe. Or the man who isn't your uncle but sleeps close enough to feel like one. The sound settles, then disappears, like everything else. You blink slowly, but not to see. The light is the same whether your eyes are open or closed. A dull, filtered haze through dirt-streaked linen. What matters is not what you see, but what is seen of you. Because that's the thing. You are always being seen. But not in the way you want to be. Not in the way that means you matter. Eyes follow the movement of your hands. How steady they are when you pour something hot. Whether your fingers flinch at the scrape of a pot. How quickly you bend to gather spilled lentils from the dirt-packed ground. You are a shape of usefulness. You are the potential for mistakes. You are not a person, not exactly. You are a function. You are watched when you work, but not when you wonder. You've learned this slowly, with the sort of understanding that grows without words. You know that a misstep earns a mutter, a grunt, a flick of cloth against your head. But sitting too long in the corner, tracing spirals in the ash with your toe, that's met with nothing. No correction, no interest, just absence. You could disappear into that silence if you let yourself. You carry buckets because someone expects you to. Not because they say so, but because not doing it invites the kind of attention that's worse than silence. The kind that pinches. The kind that burns in the belly later. But when you carry them well, steadily, with your chin down and your jaw tight, no one says a thing. There is no praise, no smile, only the absence of scolding. That is what passes for love. Sometimes you wonder if the goat sees you more clearly than the adults do. It watches from the corner, chewing in that thoughtful way, as if you're the strange one, as if it knows that you dreamed of a bright red ribbon once, and that dream still clings to your ribs like a hunger you're not supposed to have. The goat doesn't blink when you sigh too loudly. It doesn't measure your silence. It only exists, and lets you exist too. That might be the closest thing to friendship, you know. There is a girl, older, but not by much, who once showed you how to twist straw into little knots. Not to make anything useful, just to make shapes. She's gone now, or somewhere else. You don't ask. You don't speak her name. But sometimes when you squat behind the shed and the wind whistles through the slats, you tie knots just like she did. And that's when you feel almost seen. Not by the people in the house, but by something quieter. The wind, maybe, or the memory of what her hands looked like, moving fast, but never rushed. Inside the longhouse, there is never true quiet. There's always breathing, shifting, the sound of someone chewing, even if there's nothing in their mouth. The wooden beams above creak with their own thoughts. The fire murmurs, even when it's only a faint red smear in the ashes. You are part of this chorus, but never its melody. You hum beneath it. You fill the empty corners. The adults don't ask you how you feel. That's not something children are meant to have. Feelings. Only duties. Feelings are too slippery, too expensive. You keep them folded inside you, like old cloth tucked beneath straw. Sometimes they itch. Sometimes they hurt. But mostly, they stay hidden. Your dreams are not watched. That is their magic. when your head sinks into the mat that smells of old sweat and slightly damp wool, and you drift into that heavy place where memories and hopes blur. That's the only time no one sees you. And yet, the church teaches you that even then, you are not alone. The painted saint on the wall has eyes that never blink. The priest, when he passes through, speaks of sins like he's listing chores. Eyes that see all. Judgment that arrives in silence but never misses. So you dream carefully. You try to keep your dreams plain. You don't know how, but you sense that dreaming of too much, too brightly, too freely, might draw notice. And in this world, notice is dangerous. You've seen what happens when someone is noticed too much. There was a boy once, loud with joy, full of stories and pretend swords. He tripped too often, spoke out of turn, asked too many questions. Then one day, he was quiet, not punished, not broken, just dimmed, like a candle pinched out before its time. He still exists, but no one watches him anymore, and he never speaks. You don't want to be like that, but you don't want to be seen too much either. So you master the middle, the steady pace, the bowed head, the hands that work without needing to be told. You become a shadow that does what's needed, a small presence that draws no ire. You are always watched but rarely known, and in that space, between usefulness and invisibility, you begin to build something, not a rebellion, not a plan, but a quiet resistance, a thought that hums beneath everything. I am still here. You repeat it, silently, when your knees ache from scrubbing, when the cold bites through your patched tunic, when your name is shouted but never spoken softly. I am still here. And that becomes your anchor. Not hope, not joy, but presence, endurance. A small, persistent truth tucked beneath the weight of days. Outside, someone calls a name that isn't yours. A door creaks. A rooster coughs its way into a crow. The morning begins again, as it always does. Not by sunrise, but by obligation. You rise before you are ready. You move before you are noticed. You blend into the rhythm of the day, eyes tracking your steps, measuring your worth. But deep inside, beneath it all, something soft remains. A knot of straw, a faint memory, a whisper from a goat. A space where, even if no one else sees it, you do. You do. And that for now is enough. The wind shifts against the door. A hinge sighs, and the moment passes like dust in the morning light. Quiet, unnoticed, and still. There. It begins with the bucket. Not the weight of it, though that will come. Not the roughness of the handle or the way the cold settles into the wood. But the moment just before, when someone looks at you, not unkindly, not cruelly, but expectantly. They nod toward it. And in that nod, something shifts. Something that used to be outside of you is now yours to carry. You do not yet know why. You reach for it the way you've seen others do. Hands still soft from sleep, from recent childhood, from the luxury of having been held once, though the memory of that is already faint. The handle bites into your palm differently than it did for them. It leaves no mark, not yet. Just a memory of pressure, of task, of expectation pressing into flesh. You lift. It doesn't go far. You wobble. You try again. The weight pulls you forward in a slow, dragging bow. It teaches you posture before it teaches you purpose. You learn to lean. You learn to keep your feet wide and your eyes low. You learn the rhythm of effort before the meaning of labor ever arrives. No one tells you this is work. Not in words. It is not explained. It is handed to you like a ladle or a crust of bread, without ceremony, without announcement. It simply becomes part of the day, and soon, part of you. You carry water. You feed scraps to pigs. You gather wood, careful not to lose the smallest pieces, for they are the ones that catch flame quickest. You bend more than you stand. You balance more than you rest. Your body becomes a puzzle solved by repetition. And slowly, Without even knowing it, you begin to fit into the shape others need you to be. There is no celebration for this, no rite of passage, no word like congratulations to mark the moment your hands begin to lose their softness, no witness to the tiny crack in your skin that stings with every grip. Just the goat, watching from behind its half-lidded eyes, chewing as if it understands something you don't yet know. The calluses arrive like dusk, gradually, then all at once. You notice them one morning while washing in the trough, when your fingertips scrape roughly against each other. They're not painful, just different. A thin armor forming where no battle was declared. You rub your thumbs against them again and again, curious. They feel like someone else's hands, older, drier, a little more sure. No one mentions them. That is how you know they matter. The tasks grow with you. What was once lifting becomes hauling. What was once helping becomes handling. You don't think of it as growing up. You don't think of it at all. You simply do. Sometimes, in the hush before dusk, you press your palms against the old stones behind the house. Feel the grain of them, the stillness, the memory they hold. Your calluses catch on the edges. It doesn't hurt, but it reminds you. Your skin is no longer new. Your back aches earlier now. Your knees creak when you rise. You've started making sounds your father makes, soft groans as you shift from one leg to another. They slip out without thought, like breath. You are becoming someone who endures without needing to be told why. There is a woman who spins wool at the edge of the path. She never speaks to you, but she watches your hands when you walk by. Her fingers move with purpose, looping thread endlessly. Her palms are rougher than yours, like leather left out in the wind. You wonder if she remembers softness. You wonder if she misses it. There are days your fingers swell. You don't tell anyone. There are no days off, only days where the work is a little quieter. You sit by the fire and mend nets or pluck feathers or twist cord from flax. The work never truly stops. It only changes its voice. Children are not told why. They are told to do. So you learn meaning through motion, through muscle, through the way your spine curves under a load, through the way your arms throb at night when you lie down, remembering the shape of the yoke even after it's gone. You dream of lifting, of hauling, of endless, weightless walking through fields that never end. You do not question it. The dreams come as the days do, without warning, without pause. And when you wake, your hands ache first. Not your stomach, not your head, your hands. They remind you who you are before the sun even finds the floor. There are bruises on your forearms, yellow, old ones you can't name. Sometimes you stare at them like strangers, marks from beams or tools or slips on stone. They don't scare you. They don't even really surprise you anymore. They are just there, like the stains on your tunic, like the dirt under your nails that never fully leaves. Your mother, if she's there, might touch your hand once in a while, but only to check for warmth, fever, swelling, not for comfort, not for love. Love, you've come to understand, is in the work, in the way someone saves the warmest piece of bread for you without looking at you as they do it. In the way your sibling, the one who mutters in their sleep, leaves a bit of wool for you by the hearth because they know your knees have been cold. In the way your father grunts slightly less when you carry the bucket without spilling. None of this is said, but you hear it, in the silence between chores, in the way the fire doesn't hiss when you pass, in the way the goat nudges your elbow and doesn't bite. There is a beauty in this silence, a rhythm, not joyful, not gentle, but real. It fills your days and empties you in ways you don't yet understand, and your hands keep changing. You notice it again months later, when the knife slips and doesn't bite deep. Your calluses have grown thick enough to turn a blade. You stare at the small, almost cut, like it's a message from a version of you that's learning how to survive. You are not strong yet, not fast, but you are lasting. and that is something. The wind howls through the thatch tonight, playing with the edges of the world. You curl your fingers into fists, feeling the ridges of your own skin. You do not know what they mean, but you know they are yours. You know they are becoming tools. And someday, someone smaller will look at your hands and see something you once didn't understand. They'll reach for a bucket. They'll wobble, and you'll nod, not unkindly, not cruelly, but expectantly. And the world will pass through them, just as it passed through you. For now, you sit with the ache, with the roughness, with the quiet. A sibling stirs behind you, a cough from beyond the wall. The goat shifts in its sleep. The fire settles, and your hands, resting on your knees, remember everything, even the things you're not old enough to name. They remember, and they wait. The ache never begins. It only continues. Winter does not arrive all at once. It creeps, beneath the door, along the beams, through the seams of your tunic, where your elbows bend and the fabric has worn thin. It hovers in the rafters before descending in silence, coiling around bare feet like an old cat no one invited, but no one dares move. There is no first snow, not for you. There is only the first night when the last onion is used, and no one says anything about it. The pot is lighter now. You lift it with less effort, which means you eat with less fullness. The bread shrinks, and the crumbs grow in importance. You come to understand the sound of scraping, of spoon against wood, of finger against crust, of a tongue searching the corner of the mouth for memory of taste. And your belly learns patience, not out of virtue, but out of necessity. It rumbles like a distant drum, not yet calling for war, but warning of siege. The straw you sleep on smells of mold. It's old now, like everything else, and it crackles when you move. A chorus of whispers you cannot silence. You curl tighter to keep warmth in your bones, but the cold finds you anyway, tapping at your ribs, sliding up your spine like a careful hand with cruel intentions. It is not the kind of cold that shouts. It waits, and waits. And then, just as you begin to forget what warmth ever felt like, it reminds you. Through your fingers first, through your toes, through the hollow behind your knee. It finds the soft parts of you, the unguarded places, and it teaches. The fire is quiet tonight. It has not died, but it has grown still. Embers blink in the dark like tired eyes. You sit near it, legs tucked beneath you, watching the way the red fades to black and back again. The pot sits above the embers, steaming just slightly. The contents are familiar, not enough. You learn to measure time by the thickness of stew. Thin means early, thinner means late. None means wait until tomorrow. You swallow slowly. It helps. You count the chews even when there's little to chew. You've stopped asking for more. Asking is for those who believe more exists. There is a beetle on the floorboards. You watch it more closely than the soup. It scuttles with purpose. Its hunger is its own, but you feel a kinship. It knows what it's looking for, even if it doesn't find it. Your sibling beside you sighs in their sleep, a breath drawn too sharply, as if even dreams have begun to gnaw at the insides. You listen, not out of care, but habit. They're thinner now, their face sharper, like the wood carvings in the church, a face carved by winter. Your dreams have changed. They used to be nonsense. Flashes of goats in hats, of falling up staircases, of chasing voices that didn't have mouths. Now they're quieter, longer, slower. You dream of bread, of a loaf so wide you cannot carry it, of crust so thick your teeth bounce off it like stones, of the smell, rich, sweet, dense, that fills not just your nose but your lungs, your mouth, your very soul. You chew in the dream. You do not swallow. You do not need to. The chewing is enough. The chewing is everything. Sometimes you dream of biting into it and waking with your jaw moving. Sometimes your tongue moves against your teeth, looking for crumbs that never came. You no longer cry. That was before the frost, before the fire learned to whisper instead of roar, before your bones began to sound like old hinges. Tears are warm, and you no longer afford to spend the heat. The wind outside is speaking again, through the thatch, under the door. It howls not like a wolf, but like something older, something that remembers every winter before you and every one that will come after. It does not care. It has never cared. You wear every piece of clothing you own. Still, it finds you. The hunger hums louder now, not a roar, not even a shout, just a constant note, low and steady, like the string of an old instrument plucked by someone who doesn't remember music. It settles in your stomach, coils around your spine, makes you forget what full ever felt like. You think maybe it never existed. Maybe it was only a dream. A good one, yes, but still a dream. The goat watches you again, eyes dark, blinking slow. You wonder if it knows you're shrinking. You wonder if it thinks less of you now. You suck on a stone, one you found in the corner, clean and smooth. It gives your jaw something to do. It tricks your mind for a minute. It holds no flavor, but flavor is memory now. You taste hope, or maybe wood smoke, or maybe nothing. When the hunger speaks loudest, you move slower. You forget words. You forget numbers. Your thoughts drift like smoke that doesn't want to rise. You dream of meals that never happened, roast meats you never saw, pies you've only heard of, fruit with juice that runs down your chin. In the dream, you are always full, and then you always wake, and you are not. No one talks about it. No one says, I am hungry. They say, I'm fine. They say, go help your brother with the wood. They say, stir the pot, gently. They say nothing at all. Silence is how winter speaks here, not through snow, but through empty bowls and quiet lips and hands that tremble when they pass the bread too slowly, pretending to be generous. You do not count the days anymore. You count the scoops, the crusts, the bones left clean and sucked dry. You count the ways to stretch a meal, hot water, oat dust, prayers you do not believe. The priest says suffering brings you closer to God, but when you stare at the sky, it does not blink back. The stars are cold too. You huddle closer to your sibling at night now. Not for warmth, not really, but because when you both shiver, you feel less alone in it. Misery shared is not less, but it is understood. There are fewer rats in the loft. You know this because you see them less, not because you hear them less. Even they have gone to find scraps elsewhere. You envy them a little. You learn not to flinch when your stomach growls in front of others. You pretend not to notice theirs. It is a polite fiction, a kindness, the only one you still have to give. The fire finally dies, and no one rushes to feed it. It would only complain. You lie down again. The straw does not shift much. Your body has grown lighter. You curl your fingers around your ribs. They meet. There is no pain, just space. The dream comes slower now, through the silence. It is soft at first, a single crumb on a stone plate, and you stare at it for what feels like hours. You reach for it. You touch it. You don't eat it. You just hold it. It is yours. And then the dream grows into a fire, into a table, into steam, into everything you've forgotten you ever wanted. You smile in the dream, though your real face remains still. The goat shifts. A cough echoes behind the wall. Your sibling sighs again, and the hunger hums its lullaby. Low, endless, familiar. You do not answer. You sleep anyway. The hunger hums quieter this morning, not because it's gone, but because your body has learned how to listen without flinching. The ache fades into the background, like the wind that never truly leaves, but softens when clouds hang low. You blink crust from your lashes and stretch without lifting. letting your bones remember they exist before asking them to move. The room is still dark, but it is not silent. The goat shifts behind the boards, breathing like a sleeping cousin. Your sibling turns over and mutters something unintelligible, words twisted by dreams or memories or both. The fire is only memory now, a scatter of soft gray where there used to be flame, and the chill in the room is not sharp, not cruel, just permanent. No one says school in your home. Not the way it's said in stories, or by passing monks who speak of letters and saints and miracles pressed into pages. The word is like a stone at the bottom of the well. Real, perhaps, but not reachable. You've heard it once or twice, in hushed voices that don't expect you to be listening. He might be clever enough for the abbey, someone once said. Not to you. Never to you. Still, the thought lingers, faint as smoke. What you do instead is rise before the frost has retreated and learn in silence. You learn what matters. How to sweep ashes without scattering them. How to pour from a cracked jug without losing a drop. How to carry water in a way that doesn't soak your hem. How to keep your voice low when your father's brow is already furrowed. You learn by watching, which means your eyes are never still. You learn by failing, which means your hands are never clean. There is no slate, no ink, no bell to signal your lessons. Only the rhythm of chores, the memorization of weight and temperature and silence. You count steps without meaning to. You track patterns in the weather. You remember which wood crackles too loud, which eggshells are too thin, which hens are mean. You study life because it is the only thing offered to you, and it is a harsh tutor with no patience for questions. The priest visits sometimes. He smells like wax and wool and old dust. His eyes are small and shiny, like he's always thinking of something far more important than your existence. He carries a book, heavy and bound in leather. You have never touched it. You imagine it is cold and soft and impossible. He speaks in a tongue you do not know. Latin, they say, the language of God, but it might as well be the language of walls. He doesn't look at you when he speaks it. He looks past you, or above you, as if you're something low and temporary, a smudge on the floor where a soul might once be, if it behaved. Sometimes he asks questions, though not to you. He asks your mother if any of the children have shown signs of aptitude. You don't know what that means. It sounds like something you could catch. She always says no. There is a boy in the village who goes to the abbey now. You see him once a week, walking behind a man in robes with a rope belt and quiet shoes. The boy walks stiffly, like he doesn't belong in his clothes, and you wonder if he's still hungry. His face looks cleaner than yours, but not happier. His mouth twitches like he's always about to say something, and then swallows it instead. You envy him. You do not like him. You practice words in your head, the ones you hear but never speak. Long ones, strange ones. You whisper them when no one is near, in the field, or by the stream, or into the woodpile where sound is swallowed. You do not know what the words mean, but you know how they feel in your mouth, like spells. Like maybe if you say them enough, something might change. The rooster teaches time, not letters. Its crow is the only clock you trust, and it is merciless. You learn quickly that it waits for no one. You race it sometimes, rising before it crows, just to feel victorious, just to believe that maybe, for one moment, you are ahead of the world. The women speak in riddles, not the kind with clever answers, but the kind that make you guess how angry they are, or how tired, or how much they expect of you today. You learn to read faces the way others read parchment, the twitch of an eyelid, the slump of a shoulder, the pause in a breath. You become fluent in tension. You speak the language of silence fluently. Once, an old man tried to teach you how to carve letters into bark. You remember his fingers, gnarled like roots, stained with something that never washed away. He showed you how to hold the blade, how to press just enough. You carved a shape, a crooked thing. It was supposed to be a letter. You don't know which one. He nodded anyway, then never came back. You ran your fingers over that letter until the bark wore smooth. That too was a lesson. There is a boy who learned to count to 20. He counts aloud, loud enough for others to hear, to notice. But he always forgets 17. You never correct him. You don't know why. You're not sure what 17 is supposed to feel like. Sometimes you dream of school, not because you long for it exactly, but because your mind tries to stitch stories from scraps. You imagine a room with benches, a board, a man who doesn't yell. You imagine the warmth of many bodies pressed close in a place that smells of chalk and dust and other people's thoughts. You imagine learning the names of things, as if naming them makes them yours. But mostly, your world is learned by hand. You learn to knead, to lift, to scrape, to stoop, to stir without spilling, to duck when your name is said too sharply. You learn that being quiet is safer, that curiosity is a luxury, that questions are dangerous when answers do not exist. Books are heavy. You know this because you carried one once, briefly, for someone else. It pulled at your shoulder and left a mark. You wondered what inside could weigh so much. Perhaps it was knowledge. Perhaps it was just pages, layered with things meant for other people, not for you. Your mother does not read. Your father does not read. You assume they once saw someone who did. That is all. The goat watches you again, as if it knows things you never will. You do not resent it. You admire it. You wish your eyes were as steady. The priest passes your home again. He does not stop. The book is still in his hands. You wonder if it has changed since the last time you saw it. You wonder if books age like people, if they wrinkle or soften or grow quiet. You turn back to your chores. You lift. You wipe. You stir. You carry. You wait. No one says you are smart. They say you are helpful. They say you are quiet. They say you are good at remembering how the shutters latch. That is your education. The wind tugs at the doorframe again. The fire has not been lit yet. The pot is still cold. You press your palm to the table and feel the damp that never leaves. You close your eyes. The letters you carved long ago are gone now. The wood reused, the bark burned. But you still remember the shape. It didn't mean anything, but it was yours. The rooster crows again, late this time. Your hands are already dusted with flour. The day has begun. The lesson continues. And the pages, the invisible ones, keep turning. Softly, silently, without ink, without end. The warmth from the fire has long since become a memory, even though the ashes still glow in the hearth. You lie curled in the same itchy blanket that scratches your neck every night, the wool stiff with time, the scent of smoke and salted meat woven into every thread. The night presses against the house like a thick, slow-breathing beast. And in the distance, or maybe not so far at all, someone tells a story that isn't meant for your ears. You aren't close to the fire. The adults are. Their feet stretch out toward the warmth while your back stays close to the wall. The stone behind you cold and unmoving, like the silence expected of you. The words drift back through the flickering dark, not loud, not urgent, but persistent. Low voices, too far for comfort, too near to ignore. You were told not to listen, but stories never ask permission to enter. They only need a crack, a lull in breath, a thin wall, a child's open ears. It begins as it always does. Someone coughing, someone spitting, someone offering a scrap of bread or a bitter root to chew. Then the voice takes shape, the one that always starts the stories, the one too tired for lies, but not tired enough to keep quiet. You pretend to sleep. That's part of the ritual. If you make no noise, you are not here. If you do not blink too loudly, they forget your small body is curled near the door. And so the tale unwinds like smoke, soft at first, curling upward, then darker, heavier. It slips into your ears and curls behind your eyes, before your mind even understands what it means. There is a child, always a child, and they go too far, past the edge of the woods, past the place where the saint statue stands with its hollow eyes and splintered feet, past the thorn hedge that scratches louder than it should. The child hears something, bells, or maybe crying, maybe both. The story is never told the same way twice, but it always ends the same way. The child is gone, not dead, not rescued, not anything that makes sense to you, just gone, as though the world opened a mouth and swallowed them without chewing. And now, everyone says the same thing, every time someone wanders too far. Like that one child, they mutter. No name, just that one. Your spine curls tighter. You pull your feet closer to your chest. The blanket is no comfort now. It holds the cold in just the same as it holds the warmth out. The fire crackles. Someone mutters a prayer they don't really believe. Someone else laughs, sharp, without joy. The story is over, but the silence afterward is louder. You do not fall asleep easily after that, because now there are sounds again, but not from the fire. The wind scrapes its fingers against the roof. The goat shifts in the straw outside and lets out a slow, suspicious bleat. The floor beneath you creaks as if someone has stepped where no one should be standing. And the cold? The cold feels heavier somehow, like it is watching. You know the stories are not true, or not true in the way they were told, but they are true in another way. They explain the ache in your bones, the quiet you're expected to keep, the way adults look past you when they speak, as though you are already halfway gone. The stories become rules, and the rules become part of your skin. Do not go into the woods. Do not stray past the second field. Do not speak to strangers, even ones that smile, especially ones that smile. Do not look into the mirror after dark. Do not leave your shoes out overnight. Do not step over the churchyard stones without counting them. Some rules contradict others. Some make no sense at all. But you follow them, because every story ends with a child who didn't. Even now, days later, you can feel the story still inside you, not as a memory, but as a shadow. When you stir the pot, when you pull water from the well, when you lie in the dark listening to your siblings breathing, it's there, waiting, not speaking, just being. You think of that nameless child, the one from the story, the one who didn't come back. You wonder what they saw, whether they're cold, whether they still remember their own name. There are other stories too. Stories told by neighbors with cracked voices and eyes that never quite meet your own. A girl who bled before she should have and vanished the next day. A boy who heard voices from the woods and followed them on a dare. A whole family that went silent one winter and was never spoken of again. You don't know if they're stories meant to teach or stories meant to scare. But they've done both. They've made you careful. They've made you small. They've made you keep your back to the wall when you sleep and your eyes on the path when you walk. You hear the stories and then you live them. Not all at once, but in pieces. A glance over your shoulder. A word you don't speak. A question you don't ask. Sometimes when you're alone, in the corner behind the grain sacks, or crouched by the hens, or staring at the warped ceiling beams above your mat, you try to tell yourself a different story. One where no one vanishes. One where the goat is just a goat and not something waiting to speak in riddles. One where the woods are just woods and not a mouth with mossy teeth. But that story doesn't stick. It slides off your skin like rain from oiled leather. It has no weight, no bite. It does not explain why your mother's hands tremble when she hears the bell at the wrong time. It does not explain the way your father's voice goes flat when someone mentions a name he hasn't heard in years. The real stories stay. You carry them, not in your memory, but in your steps. You learn not to whistle near the graveyard. You learn not to ask about the old barn that leans too much to one side. You learn that sometimes adults will stop talking as soon as you enter a room, and sometimes they won't. And that's worse. And the worst part, the part you would never say out loud, not even if you had the words, is that sometimes, late at night, you wish the stories would take you too. Not because you want to be gone, but because at least then someone might speak your name with that same hush, that same reverence, that same fear. But no one tells stories about the children who stay, only about the ones who disappear. And so you lie still, even when your legs ache. You breathe slowly, even when your heart gallops. You pretend not to hear, even when every word lands like a stone in your chest. The fire has died now. The coals are quiet. The blanket has wrapped you twice, and still does not feel enough. A moth flutters near the wall. The rafters creak. Someone coughs in the dark, and it sounds like it came from inside a dream. You close your eyes, but the story is still there. It always is. And in the hush between heartbeats, you listen. Because it might be told again tomorrow, and you already know you'll listen again, even though you shouldn't. The ache in your finger begins before dawn, dull and tucked beneath the knuckle, like something borrowed from an old man's hand that has quietly made its home in yours. You flex it. It resists, then tightens, like a knot that no longer wants to be untied. You don't mention it at first. Pain is too common to be interesting. There are more urgent things to do. Bread to chew that still grinds against the roof of your mouth. Water to carry in buckets that nip your raw palms with their handles. Footsteps to follow through fields that never dry fully, no matter how long the sun pretends to shine. But the ache lingers, stretching from joint to wrist to shoulder. You don't cry. Crying is a sound no one listens to unless it comes from a goat or a baby or the wrong kind of wind. You keep it folded inside, next to the tight coil behind your ribs where all your quiet hurts are stored. When you finally show your hand, half out of habit, half out of hope, the response is a glance, a shrug, a muttered name of a saint whose bones supposedly lie beneath a chapel 3 villages over. The name does nothing. The ache stays. The ache doesn't know Latin. You are told it will pass, or it won't. Either way, the chores remain. You are still expected to lift, to haul, to kneel, to scrub. The pain is not a reason to stop. It is just a detail now, like the smoke in the rafters or the itch in your woolen shirt. It joins you at the table, sleeps with you on the mat, walks beside you like an older sibling with no face. Sometimes someone notices, a neighbor with hands more gnarled than yours, a grandmother whose back has bent into a question that will never be answered. They don't offer comfort, only recognition, a nod, a look that says, yes, I remember that one. The one that started in the hand and traveled up the arm like a slow storm. It has visited them too. They survived it. So will you. Maybe. Other times the pain is sharper, sudden, blooming like fire behind your knee after a bad fall, or blooming in your tooth like rot that sings through your whole skull. That's when the saints are invoked more loudly. Crosses are drawn in the air, sometimes on your forehead, sometimes above your bedding. Someone lights a candle, though it's too small to warm the room and too weak to chase out what's already come in. They speak of saints like they are nearby, like they are busy with more important tasks, stopping famines, guiding soldiers, protecting cows. Your pain is too small for them, too ordinary. You are left to chew willow bark if there is any, or press a cold cloth to your face, or bite your own sleeve so no one hears you groan. No one panics. Pain is not a problem to be solved. It is a guest to be endured, an inevitable visitor, a consequence of breath and bone. They speak of it like weather, some years worse than others, some nights heavy enough to rattle your sleep. They teach you to pray, but not for healing, only for patience. You learn to wrap your wounds in old cloth. You learn which parts of your body can bruise without losing function. You learn how to hide a limp. You learn the art of stillness. Not the comfortable kind, but the kind that comes from fear of making a pain worse. You become quiet in new ways. You move like a shadow, trying not to startle its own shape. Sometimes you hear of a miracle, a boy with a crooked back who stood straight after bathing in a spring, a girl whose fever broke after a relic touched her lips. These stories are always told by someone who heard them from someone else. You never meet the boy or the girl. You only meet the pain. And it does not leave with a kiss from a bone wrapped in silk. It stays. And when it doesn't, when it finally loosens its grip, you are almost afraid to move. You don't trust the ease. You wait for it to return. And it often does. Not in the same place, but somewhere nearby. Pain knows how to find you again. It knows your name even when no one else says it. The saints have statues, but you do not. They are carved from wood that does not splinter. They gaze toward heaven with eyes that never blink. Your eyes stay on the floor. Your hands remain dirty. No one expects you to be divine, only obedient, only quiet, only useful, even when your joints swell like overripe fruit, even when your fingernails turn black, even when the soles of your feet crack open like dry bread. You learn to shift your weight, to balance the hurt across different muscles. You favor one side until it too begins to ache. Then you switch. This is your rhythm now. Not a dance, but a negotiation. The pain teaches you things the saints never do. How to keep breathing without comfort. How to hold still while your skin burns. How to bite the inside of your cheek to distract from something worse. You learn the difference between pain that passes and pain that becomes part of you. Others begin to treat you differently. Not with sympathy, that's a luxury, but with expectation. If you've endured this, you can endure more. You have proven yourself. You are now trusted to carry heavier loads, to stay out longer, to rise faster. There is no reward for this endurance, only more of it. And when others hurt, a younger sibling who falls, a neighbor's child who limps, you find your mouth repeating what was once said to you. It will pass, or it won't. Either way, there is still work to do. No one explains pain in full. It is too large and too common. Instead, you are told stories, not of cures, but of martyrs. People who suffered more than you, which is meant to make your suffering smaller. But it doesn't. It only makes it lonelier. Because you are not a martyr. You are a child. And still, you are expected to carry the weight of both. You sit now near the edge of the firelight, legs stiff beneath you, hand tucked close to your ribs to keep the swelling hidden. The others talk. The stories flow around you. You nod when needed. You keep your expression flat. You pretend to be whole. The fire crackles. The floor shifts beneath someone's foot. A rat scurries behind the woodpile. The goat outside huffs as though it too is tired of waiting for warmth. And in that stillness, you feel the pain pulsing beneath your skin. Not loud, but steady, like a bell rung underwater. You do not flinch. You do not pray. You simply breathe, because this too is part of your shape now. The ache beneath the quiet, the burn behind the silence. You lie down later, curled like a question that won't be answered. The mat beneath you is unforgiving. The air around you tastes of ash and cold meat. A cough echoes from the other side of the wall. Someone mutters in their sleep. A drip from the ceiling lands in a bowl with a rhythm that feels almost kind. You close your eyes, And you do not ask to wake without pain. You only ask to wake with enough strength to carry it again. The quiet from before still clings to you, like the hem of a damp woolen skirt, unshaken, unspoken, ever there. You haven't left childhood, not really, not truly, but the world does not wait for the edges to soften. You are being led forward, not by time, but by expectation. And it's not a march. It's not even a walk. It's more like a folding, like cloth drawn inward, like a cocoon that tightens before there's time to grow wings. You are small, but already you've learned the weight of watching, the way eyes settle on you like frost before dawn, the way older women sigh without words when they glance your way. You do not know what they see in you, only that it must be something that changes, quietly, in the night. The bodice is tighter this week. It binds across your ribs and pinches beneath your arms. It was not meant for comfort. It was meant for presence. Your mother's hands do not linger when she knots the ties. They pull, firm and familiar, the way she pulls weeds or wounds shut. Hair, too, becomes different now. No longer a mess to be ignored, but a banner to be tamed. You braid it in silence. Not because anyone told you to, but because the older girls do. Because loose hair invites whispers, and you've had enough of those. The work hasn't changed, but you have. Your hands are still small, still soft in places, still unsure when lifting heavy pots or brushing soot from the hearth. But now, when you fumble or pause, there is less patience, less laughter, as if mistakes that once marked you as young now simply mark you as lacking. You try not to cry when the bread burns, not because it hurts anyone, but because your mother's mouth presses into that tight line again. Because someone will say, that won't do when she's married, though no one says when that might be, only that it will be, that it must be. You listen more now. To the soft conversations near the door, when grown women bend close and speak of things they won't say aloud in daylight. You don't understand it all, but some phrases stick. Bleeding already. She's ripe now. The Lord's eye wandered again. You do not want to know what they mean, and yet you do, or at least you feel what they mean. Like a rope around your belly pulled tighter by the hour. There's a girl in the next hut who used to climb trees with you. Her name is no longer spoken with yours. She is kept close now, guarded like a prize or a secret. Her hips widened too soon, and now she is watched, not the way you watch a child, the way you watch a field about to be harvested. Your own body begins to betray you, slowly, without warning. One morning there is blood, not enough to panic, not enough to stain more than linen, but enough to end something unnamed. You do not tell your mother. You do not tell anyone. You bury the cloth under ash and go about the day as if nothing shifted. But it did. And after that, your footsteps become quieter. Not because you are afraid, but because you feel the world listening, as if it can hear the change in your blood, as if it is now allowed to open doors you never asked to walk through. At night, you lay stiff on your mat, hands folded over your belly, eyes open to the rafters. The goats rustle. A sibling coughs. A wind lifts the thatch and rattles it like brittle parchment. You wonder how many girls have lain like this before. Wonder if they felt like they were being erased while still alive. Your father's silence is not unkind, but it is heavy. He does not look at you directly anymore, not when speaking. And when he does, it is as though he's seeing something he cannot fix, or something he does not wish to name. There are no celebrations, no candles, no garlands of flowers to mark this shift. There is only the added weight of a bucket, the new look from the baker's son, the way your mother watches how you kneel when you sweep. You are not yet 12. The goat that always stares at you from the edge of the pen tilts its head, as if amused. as if it knows what comes next, as if it has seen too many girls grow into women without ever learning what girlhood was meant to feel like. There is no mirror to show you your face, but there is water. In the mornings, you lean over the basin and glimpse a girl who frowns more now, who ties her apron higher, who tries to smile when asked if she's all right, who does not know what that means anymore. You do not feel ready, but no one asks. Readiness is a luxury, one reserved for those who are not needed immediately, and you are needed now. There is a wedding in the village next month. The girl is 15. The man is not. She carries herself like someone who has stopped asking questions. You wonder if that will be you. You wonder how many more seasons they'll give you before someone decides you've ripened too. And still, each morning, you braid your hair, you tie your shoes, you lift the pail, you stir the pot. Your body does not ask for permission to change. It simply does, and you learn to follow it, even when you're not sure where it's going. Sometimes, at the edge of sleep, you dream of being smaller again, of days when your knees were dirty and your laughter was not met with shushing. You dream of running, not away, just running, for the sake of motion, for the sake of being light. But you no longer run. You walk, carefully, quietly. You carry things you don't name. You endure things you don't explain. And each night, you lie down and try to remember what it felt like to be a child, even though no one calls you that anymore, even though the girl you were is still there, beneath the calluses and the careful posture, waiting for someone to let her speak again. But no one does. And so you close your eyes. You listen to the goat shift its weight. You feel the cold breath of night slip in through the roof, and you hold still, like something already carved. The silence settles, and with it, the dust, just the way it always does. The warmth from the last dream still clings faintly to your chest, but not for long. The day does not wait for softness. It does not pause for memory. It presses forward without asking if your legs are ready, if your back is steady, if your breath has caught up with your bones. There is no moment when anyone tells you that you are no longer a child. There is no line drawn in ash or chalk or blood that says, "Here now, you are a man." It happens the way shadows grow, quietly, slowly, until you look down one morning and realize your own feet have begun to carry the weight that once belonged to others. You do not become a man by reaching a certain age, or by receiving a blessing, or by standing before a crowd. You become a man by not sitting down when your legs beg you to, by carrying things no one else wants to carry, by biting your tongue until the bleeding stops and no one notices it started. You rise earlier now, though no one told you to. You carry the heavier pails. You are handed the duller blade. You are expected to know, without asking, what comes next. And when you do not know, you guess. You copy the rhythm of your father's movements, the way his shoulders shift before lifting, the way his breath leaves his nose like fog before words ever form. He does not teach you. He demonstrates, and you are meant to see. When you fail, there is no punishment, just silence. And that silence is its own kind of weight, a disappointment that doesn't shout. It settles into your ribs, behind your ears, beneath your skin. You do not cry anymore, not where anyone can see, not even when the splinter runs deep or the burn bubbles white. You blink and look away. You say nothing, and that silence, too, becomes a lesson. There are no games now, no excuses, no hiding behind smaller boys. When someone needs lifting, you lift. When something needs killing, you kill. Even when your stomach flips, even when your hands tremble, you do not speak of what you feel. You only show what you do. Sometimes your younger brother watches you with wide eyes, the same way you once watched the older boys, with a kind of fear and a kind of envy. You want to tell him to stay small, to sleep longer, to let his shoulders remain unburdened a little while more. But instead, you hand him the bucket. And so it continues. The tasks are the same each day, but they begin to press differently on your frame. When the ox stares at you too long, you no longer look away. When the wind howls through the eaves, you do not shiver as you once did. The world has not softened. You have simply stiffened. And that, too, is part of the shift. You feel your body change before your voice does. Muscles appearing like bruises. Sudden, sore, uninvited. Your clothes fit differently. Your feet always hurt. There is a smell to you now that does not leave, no matter how often you scrub. Your mother says nothing, but your sister wrinkles her nose, and you learn to walk farther from her. You hear things you're not meant to hear. Grunts from behind barns. Laughter that isn't playful. Conversations that stop when you enter the room. You pretend not to notice. You let the words pass through you like smoke. You're not ready to know, but you're no longer allowed the comfort of ignorance. There's a cut on your palm that refuses to heal. You've kept it hidden beneath your sleeve. Not because you fear infection, but because if your father sees it, he will hand you something heavier and watch how you hold it. You are no longer measured by what you can feel, only by what you can endure. You dream of things sometimes, but only briefly. Of running through the fields without purpose. Of pretending a stick is a sword, not a tool. Of shouting just to hear your own voice echo back. But you wake before the dream finishes. You always do. And in the silence before the chores begin, you sit still on the cold edge of the hearth and listen to your grandfather cough in the dark. It rattles deep, like the stones shifting under the earth. You do not ask if he's all right. You already know the answer. He is old, and that is his burden. You are young, and that is yours. The older boys do not laugh anymore. They grunt. They nod. They share bread with their hands, not their eyes. When you join them, they do not make space. You take it, quietly, gratefully, knowing that silence is its own permission. You hear your mother speak less now. Her eyes search you, but not the way they once did. Not as a child, but as something being weighed, as something approaching usefulness, as something she will have to send into the world, soon, whether you're ready or not. There is no ceremony, no marker, no song, only the slow addition of responsibility until you forget what it was like to sleep in. You no longer ask what day it is. They all arrive the same way, gray light, cold breath, aching limbs, and when evening falls, you do not fall with it. You stand a little longer, your feet rooted in mud, your arms sore from holding tools not made for your hands. A goat bleats nearby, low and bored, as if reminding you that even the animals have seen this before. Boys growing into shapes they did not choose, strength replacing softness like moss overtaking a stone. And still, you do not complain. You endure, not because you are noble, not because you are brave, but because you do not know anything else. And as the sky bleeds out into blue, and the night wind creeps in again through the slats in the wood, you lie down on the straw that is not yet warm. You fold your arms behind your head. You stare upward at beams you can now touch without stretching. The sounds around you soften. A cough, a shuffling foot, the whisper of your brother turning in his sleep. You feel the ache in your back settle into the familiar place, the one it always finds. You are not yet a man, but no one is waiting for you to declare it. You've already begun carrying the weight, and the weight does not ask how old you are, only whether you can hold it a little longer. You close your eyes, and the night folds in around you like worn linen. Somewhere in the darkness, a rat scratches. And in the hush that follows, your breath fades gently into the straw. The straw beneath you still smells faintly of last year's damp, and the wool blanket scratches your neck where the frayed seam curls. The warmth you earned from yesterday's labor has already wandered off into the walls. Cold fingers tap your ribs, your collar, your knees, curious as ever. Morning hasn't quite arrived, but it's close. Close enough to tug you from rest, even though the air is brittle and the sky beyond the shutter is still holding its breath. The floor groans under someone else's weight, a sibling likely. You know their footsteps by the rhythm of the creak. The room doesn't brighten, but it begins to stir. Breath shifts around you. Hushed coughs, the shiver of someone pulling on frozen clothes, the sound of bare feet trying not to disturb what little peace remains. Your body is sore in the places it always is, and in a few new ones you can't yet name. The weight of the day sits beside you like a familiar hound. No growl, no bark, just presence, just pressure. You don't feel thankful. Not yet. Not today. Maybe not ever. But you've learned to say you are. The words arrive in the same order, from the same mouths. Be grateful you have a roof. Be grateful there's broth left. Be grateful your hands still work. Be grateful your father returned this time. Be grateful the fever spared you. Be grateful, child. Be grateful. The refrain weaves through the walls like wind, rising each time a complaint dares to be born in the shape of a sigh. But you are tired. So tired. The kind of tired that doesn't go away with rest, because rest never truly arrives. The kind of tired that builds behind your ribs like smoke. And still, the list of what you're meant to be thankful for grows longer than the list of things you are allowed to feel. You don't say anything. You nod when expected. You keep your face flat like the sky before snow. But inside, you wonder what it would feel like to simply want something without being told that you shouldn't. Breakfast is not breakfast. It's just what's left. Crusts softened in water, a scrap of lard, the hard edge of cheese turned dry from air. Your jaw aches as you chew, but you chew anyway. And when your mother sees you hesitate, she offers the phrase again, the same one as always. Be grateful. Others have less. And you know it's true. You've seen it. The boy with the open sore on his foot. The girl who watches from the road with nothing in her hands, not even a stick to stir the mud. You know their names, or at least what others call them. You've seen the way their fathers stare through people, as though everything in the world is just distance between themselves and some forgotten comfort. But knowing others suffer more does not lift the ache from your shoulders. It only wraps a second ache around it. The ache of guilt. You are not allowed to feel ungrateful without also feeling wrong. The work today is the same as yesterday, and the day before. The tasks do not ask how you are. They do not wait for your strength. They are simply there, waiting, as they always are. You carry the water from the stream even though the path is slippery and your foot still remembers the twist from last week. You haul the wood that splinters your palms. You stack the hay that hides the bite of something you can't name, something small and sharp that leaves your arms peppered with red. You don't complain, because to complain is to invite a story from someone older, a story of how it used to be worse, of how they were beaten for less, of how they walked farther, carried more, cried less. Their memories are warnings disguised as pride. They tell them not to be believed, but to be obeyed. Sometimes you want to ask, did it help? Did all that suffering make you kind? But you don't. You keep your mouth shut, because you are told that silence is part of being good, and being good is part of being grateful. The afternoon is cold but dry. You hear birds somewhere, not singing, just calling. A short sound, sharp and singular. It echoes strangely through the bare trees. You pause a moment, your arms full of wet linens, and look upward, not in hope, just in habit. Your fingertips sting. Your toes have gone numb in your shoes again. And still, When your sister offers you the smallest piece of the soft bread she hid from the last market day, you almost don't take it, because even kindness feels dangerous. Even kindness is something you're told you didn't earn. You wonder how many small good things you've turned away simply because you feared being ungrateful for wanting them. In the shed behind the house, you find a place to sit for a breath or two. Just to be still. Just to let your spine sag against the beam. You don't close your eyes, but your gaze goes soft. The air here smells of old leather, rust, and mouse droppings. It is not pleasant, but it is yours for the moment. You think about the feast days, the ones that come twice a year when something slightly better appears on the table and the adults put on songs in their throats and pretend the ache in their joints isn't winning. On those days, you feel joy, real joy, but it's tangled with a thread of shame because you're told not to expect it again, not to need it, not to ask for more. Even joy must be rationed, like sugar, like warmth. You are taught not just to endure, but to do so with a smile. And when your smile falters, they call you spoiled. But you don't remember being spoiled. You don't remember softness lasting long enough to become habit. You want to ask what gratitude really means when you have no choice. When the choices are hunger or silence. When the choices are bruised knees or cold feet. When the choices are obedience or solitude. Is it gratitude if it's forced? If it's whispered over and over until it replaces your own voice? But the asking is not allowed. Only nodding. Only phrases repeated like a prayer. Thank you for this crust. Thank you for this ache. Thank you for the roof that leaks only sometimes. Even now, as you rest your head against the edge of the wooden trough and feel your eyelids tug toward sleep, you hear it again. From a neighbor this time, muttering it to her child as she brushes lice from the girl's scalp. Be thankful, child. You don't know how lucky you are. The child nods, the way you do, and you wonder if she feels the same knot forming behind her ribs, that tight, twisting thing that makes every kindness feel like a test, every comfort feel like a debt. The sky darkens early again. The clouds crowd together like sheep before a storm. You step inside, arms full of wood. No one thanks you. But that's not the point. You are to be grateful for the chance to serve. That's what they've always said. The fire is small tonight. The food is thin. The silence is thicker than both. And when you lie down, still cold, still aching, you do not pray for joy. You do not pray for peace. You do not even pray for change. You pray for the strength to feel thankful tomorrow, even when you are not. A wind creeps beneath the doorframe, brushing your face like an old hand. And in the quiet that follows, the rat resumes its scratching beneath the floorboards. The fire gives a last tired sigh, and your breath joins it, fading into the night. You've carried cold and hunger, silence and ache, for what feels like a lifetime that has barely lasted a decade. Tonight, those burdens settle again around your shoulders like the weight of straw in your bed, pressing you flat against the rough boards below. The walls are unmoved by your fatigue, unmoved by the stories you've swallowed whole, unmoved by the fragility of your bones. And yet, you have pulled them forward, day by day, step by step, through the narrow door frames of your childhood. Tonight, something beyond endurance stirs in your chest, an ember of something defiantly warm. The hearth is nearly out, a single ember glowing like a borrowed spark of defiance. The air within the longhouse has softened, the chores have ended, the words unspoken, and the body's demands have finally quieted. You remain still, though it is easier to remain if you pretend that even that requires effort. Your fingers brush the cold wood of the floor one last time. The stump of a candle leans in its holder, a stub exhausted beyond flame yet still upright, its wax hardened into a lopsided monument to endurance. Beyond your straw mattress, your siblings breathe, 2 or 4 or maybe more. but the count has become meaningless. You know them by the cadence of their inhalations, the tremble of a shoulder, the flutter of eyelashes, and the occasional grunt of a dream. You lie between them, connected in exhaustion, though few understand how each child carries a different sort of weight. Some bear pain, others duty, others longing. Tonight, you carry all of it, your own history, and the weight of theirs too. The night is thick. You hear the rain beginning again, as it does when pressed against thatch too old to hold fast. It murmurs overhead like remorse. Tiny droplets find their way through. You've stopped counting. Instead, you let them become a slow, uneven heartbeat between sky and skin. It humbles you. It reminds you that even what seems endless can thin to quiet if you only let yourself listen. Your breath slows and lengthens. A memory drifts near. You sit in a field once, leaning against a stone, while a goat nibbled at your sleeve, dragging you into a half-smile you didn't know you were withholding. That taste of something almost pleasant. The sun warming your hair, the goat's steady munch. It faded almost as soon as it came, but you remember it with more reverence now, because it proved that something living, even for a moment, could feel soft, could feel safe. The night deepens again, and deeper still, until your awareness pools in the space behind your eyelids. A half-thought of a path you walked barefoot, the hollow ache in your calves, the faint memory of a morsel of sweet porridge on feast morning. There is a dream already weaving, one of a place where you stand beside calm water and trace your reflection until it merges with the sky. No voices echo behind you. No chores await. No need to nod, to defer, to wear gratitude like a weight. You feel its pull, this dream, tender and absurd, as though trying to remind you that you are more than what you've been made to bear. But there is still the world you carry inside you, the list of necessities spoken in hush, the ache that taught you to fall asleep fast, the guilt for nights you allowed yourself to hope. You cradle them each in your mind, like unwanted children, and feel them edge closer to the dream. Hunger, shame, endurance, cold, debt, silence. They drift around you, not demanding, but waiting. Waiting to be looked at, acknowledged, carried again if that is what they need. In the half-light of your closed eyes, they become gentle. Hunger becomes an echo of survival, not cruelty. Cold becomes a whisper of presence, not absence. Silence becomes space to think, not punishment. And you carry them, yes, because you always have. But with something quiet shifting between you. Acceptance. Not resignation, but a meticulous acknowledgement that you are human. You are breathing. You are allowed to carry and still hold other things. Grief, pleasure, curiosity, resilience, tenderness. They are not opposites, but parts of the same heartbeat. Your ribs rise with a soft sigh. Each breath is closer to the rhythm of the hearth's final embers. You drift, tidal and slow, into a space between awake and sleeping, where dreams wake you instead. In that space, you walk again, though your feet don't touch the ground. You pass the creaking rafters, the sleeping bodies, the heavy stillness of the longhouse. You pass through weathered wood, into a field of tufts under a marble gray sky. There is no cold here, only the muted pulse of earth. You sink your toes into dew-heavy grass. It brushes your ankles with quiet acceptance. You kneel by a stream that moves too slow to even murmur. You cup the water in your calloused palms and see your reflection. A child with something in their eyes that wasn't there before. Something weary, yes, but also something like defiance, like surprise, like wonder that the world still allows you to drink, to see, to feel. Behind you the goat is there, though not in form, in breath, in the soft press of something patient and ancient, watching. It nuzzles your hair, though you cannot feel it. But you know it's there because you remember how it once held your gaze, curious, and judgmental in the same breath. You understand it now the way you never did then. Neither of you ever belonged on the other's terms, but you both belonged in the quiet. The stream becomes salt water, the sky becomes velvet, and you become an echo, a child who carries pain, who carries shame, who carries duty, and still, by the edge of something strange and absurd, still dares to dream. Not because the world is kind, certainly not because it has earned pity, but because you have refused to let the world stop being bigger than its cruelties, bigger than the one thing it has taught you to feel: endurance. Your dream quietens. The velvet becomes darker. The salt water laps at the shape of your legs. You stand. You feel weight behind your knees, but it does not bend you. It steadies you. You reach out and the darkness parts like silk. You step across a threshold you cannot name, an absence that holds the promise of something beyond this world of straws and chores and unspoken lessons. It is not a world of release. Not yet. It is a space you will carry back with you. A space where you are allowed to hold more than what world has demanded of you. A place you carry inside. Your breath becomes uniform. The embers in the hearth flicker their last sigh. The rain on the thatch stops. The floor warms where your body sinks further into the straw. The rat's scratching stops. The goat's breath still whispers at your shoulder. Your sibling's breathing slows to match. You drift now, as dreams admit you fully. Bone deep, ache soft, still, but more than you were before. You carry it all, and still, you dream.